What's up, the internet? How's everybody doing? Everybody having a good time out there today? Just waiting for my co-host, and I'm waiting for my guest. What's up, Cherry Avenue True Crime? What's up, Mike Monjo? In the chat, in the place to be, over on Instagram, over on Instagram. Cherry Avenue True Crime, man. I wonder who that is. It is now 10:02, and we will be going live in 10 minutes. 10 minutes till we go live and in tribe. I wonder if I can close these closed. New viewership. Oh gosh. So probably don't need those open. I do have 2 viewers on Kick, which is interesting. How's everybody on Kick doing? Someday I'm going to build this Kick channel. Oh, here comes the Rise of World Mind. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Kind of. Here, let me turn this music down a bit.
How about now? Is that better?
That's a bit better, yeah.
It'll probably help if I turn my
You're a little
my
quiet.
jams a little higher.
Jam it up. Lord Jammington.
Lord Jammington, indeed.
Lord Jammerberry.
Can I get my right bud here working? I can.
Old fucking Steve loves waiting until 1 second until the podcast to come on. I wonder if he even remember that we're live right now. Oh, he did. He did remember. He did remember to come to the show.
Why does my... Okay. Give me a second here.
It's Club Bobber in time.
Much better. Excellent. Okay. I am connected with the audio on both ends.
With the audio.
since that's a thing, I'm also going to mute myself while I go run to the washroom. I'll be back.
Okay. This is, of course, still the pre-show for Hey, Did You See This One? This week we don't have any guesses, correct guesses, because I put the poster up. Nobody got it correct. Nobody even guessed. One person actually did say, I hate it when I don't know these. They DM'd me that. And honestly, I don't blame them. You know, sometimes it's just, it is what it is. Sometimes it just, it is what it is. He knows what I'm talking about.
Piss.
Piss. It piss what it piss. Oh shit. Our viewers just popped up to 5 from 3.
It's because I said piss, and I summoned them.
You summoned all the pissers.
I summoned them from the piss.
Piss. It's a piss storm in here.
That's what we call our fans, the pissers. So I guess
Did you
what
see
I'll
this
say,
one piss?
Piss. Hey, did you piss this one? Shout out to White Bat Audio, who does our music each and every week here on Hey, Did You See This One? We utilize White Bat Audio, who provides DMCA free music. DMCA?
It's Run DMC.
Yeah, I was gonna say Run DMC, man. Come on, get with the program.
He provides Run DMC free music. He provides
That's
Run
technically-
DMC music.
That's technically true.
Yeah,
It is Run DMC free music.
true. I'd also like to, hey, the call to action, everybody. Go follow us where you can get your podcasts from. You can find us pretty much everywhere. Last week we covered Shaun of the Dead with Nathan Taylor. It was a great episode. Got lots of great episodes coming up. Tonight we're talking Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon, and next week we're doing a very special Monday episode to make up for my double booking fiasco from a couple weeks ago. We're talking Frighteners. You're here for the pre-show. I see, this is the funny thing. People just like watched and saw this incoming poster. They would know what to guess for the movies. I make it so easy.
So easy.
Hey, welcome to the
You
chat.
can find all your entertainment.
There's a person in my building whose, I think, only job is to creep around like a goblin and slip notes into your door. And they always do it so stealthily that you only think you heard a noise until you go check, and you're like, oh god, something's happening. And for some reason, my instinct is always, do I have rats? But I don't. I never have rats. So it's just a note being like, the water's going to be shut off tomorrow for 3 hours for repairs.
Don't you have your door like
goblins?
open?
Don't I have my door propped open?
Yeah, don't you usually keep it propped open so you get that airflow, or do you just do that like?
I do that sometimes, but I don't always have it open.
Cool.
So this is a first, actually. This is the first time that we're live on my YouTube channel. I haven't actually officially gone live on my YouTube channel before.
Whoa,
Oh, sick.
crazy.
Well, I'm excited to, show all of your 27,000 followers.
Yeah, it's only 2K, but it's, it's all just like passive subscribers who are like, I like Steve Martin. He sings a good song.
He's gonna put more Steve Martins up someday.
People have asked for that, and I'm just like, maybe. I've considered. There was one point in time where I considered making my YouTube channel just like movie clips, but then I was like, that takes too much time, and I feel far too creative for that. I just wanted that one song because I was feeling nostalgic for that movie at that moment, and it's like, oh, 2 million views later. Okay,
That's a movie that might be good for this show.
The
That I would
Jerk.
definitely have. Yeah, I'd definitely have you back for.
Yeah, I've trying to find a way to like finagle it onto Hold Up and make Davin watch it and stuff. I don't know if he's ever seen it, but I want to watch it again.
Do a Steve Martin episode and do like 3 different versions of him. Like do the jerk, do Father of the Bride, which is a more grounded, like, you know, rom-com kind of a movie, and then do the one where it's based on that story where he's got the big nose.
Okay, so it's funny you mentioned something like that. Davin sent me a message that we had gotten from some other podcast. They were basically looking for like some form of signal boost, and they're a relatively new podcast as they started in January, but they also do 3 movies. But they kind of do exactly what you suggest, is where they'll like pick Steve Martin and watch 3 Steve Martin films. As opposed to what we're a little different, where we pick some random obscure ass theme like bugs, and then try and cover the gamut in that in the best choice possible. Like we did Starship Troopers, which Davin argues isn't a bug film, it's an alien film.
No.
They literally call them bugs the whole movie.
So many times. And then he picked Arachnophobia, which was, you know, a classic John Goodman, you know.
Well, technically that's an arachnid, not a bug.
Yeah. So even where were you? Where were you 3 weeks ago?
I was probably sitting right here doing this podcast.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Actually, no, I wasn't. That was the week we braked. I was playing video games.
So sure, avoid my chat. That's fine. I feel fine.
That's so funny that there's this like a podcast that cropped up that's exactly like yours, because the podcast me and Steve were on Friday night is like eerily similar to ours.
Jason, our brand is not original. We're like,
we're not. None of us are originals here.
Listen, I came up with this idea of doing
let's get 2 white guys to talk about a movie every week.
Yeah.
That's just putting another grain of sand into the salt hill.
You're right. Listen, I'm going to start this podcast and we're going to talk about the fucking Mask of Leslie Vernon.
The Mask of Zorro.
Behind it. What's behind it? Do you have any questions, Chris? Before I know I already asked that earlier, but I think
Let's just roll with it, baby. I'll figure it out. I'll roll with the punches. I'll segue when I need to segue.
Hell yeah!
I even wore a Hannibal Lecter shirt for the occasion.
I wore a Hannibal Rectum shirt for the occasion.
Okay.
You wrecked him, all right.
In 5, 4, gather around, freaks. The Grimoires shooting pages out everywhere, and everybody's picking them up and going, "What the fuck is on this page right here?"
Whoa, so vulgar.
Gather around your internet fire and your internet radio, and ask yourself the question.
Sealed, and nightmares lurking within. The ancient book stirs ominously, whispering of unspeakable horrors and twisted sacrifices that have plagued the brave souls who dared to peek inside. But beware, for one of our sinister hosts has made a ghastly discovery. As the yellow pages were last turned, a malevolent truth unraveled. Pages are missing. Each one leading to a dark realm far more terrifying than the tome itself. A place where madness reigns, monstrous abominations lurk, and mayhem consumes all who venture too deeply. This chilling revelation serves as a stark reminder that monsters manifest in a myriad of forms. And Hey, Did You See This One? Invites you to brave the darkest corners of mind, matter, and mystery in search of the grimoire of familiar killers. Lost Pages.
all you freaks and goblins and gooners and edgers out there.
Oh my
How's
goodness.
everybody feeling tonight? This is hey, did you see this one? The freaky, spooky freak show that we produce each and every week, where we cover different movies. And this month, it's the Grimoire Familiar Killers, The Lost Pages, which of course is the idea that each year, a couple times a year, we open this magical book, and usually we just talk about Freddy, Jason, Chucky, Michael. But
That sounds like one
month,
person. Freddy,
that's-
Jason, Michael, Chucky.
this week we are kind of talking about one person all rolled into one. This is episode 144, or season 2, episode 44, and we are joined by a man of many talents, but you may know him from the Hold Up, a movie review podcast. Is that Hold Up? And also Trivial Debates, a fellow member of the United Federation of Podcasts. Please welcome, for the first time, somehow, I don't know how you've only been here once, but we welcome you to the show. It's Chris Murphy. Chris Murphy, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Chris Murphy.
I'm I'm just sitting here stroking my pussy, glad to pop my cherry and be on your show.
Well,
For
that's
audio
it
listeners, he has a cat on his lap.
Yes, it's my
He
cat,
has a
Talia.
cat. Yeah.
For our audio
She's
listeners,
so
he's
lovely.
elbow deep in that pussy. Okay, well,
Really?
that's our show for
Just-
tonight. So thank you for. This is, of course, a movie review roundtable reaction thing, and we are, like I said at the top of the show, we are covering a spooky movie from the Grimoire of the Lost Pages of the Grimoire, and it is Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon. And if you don't know what this is, we're going to tell you all about it. So as I've said in the pre-show, I did the regular game where I put up the poster and nobody got it. So
I don't.
I think this is the first
You all
time.
lose.
I think it's the first time that's ever happened. I don't think anybody got kayfabe either from April, but this one, I approached people who've been on this show.
I didn't know kayfabe. But yeah.
Like you knew what kayfabe was, or
No, I didn't know when you were posting that. I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And then I looked
Yeah.
at it and I was like, "Oh, okay."
It sucked. It was the worst mockumentary ever. It could have been what this amazing movie is, but it was not. I approached Craig, friend of the show, former guest of the show, as well as Ben Mason, friend and guest of the show, and they both knew what it was once I posted the full poster, and they'd both seen it many times. But I guess my poster, I should have just put up a picture of his like iconic mask from the movie. That might
I
have been
think
a little-
the poster image that you posted in the second social post, the one that's like full color, that was more recognizable, because like I didn't even recognize the poster that you posted up. I thought it was Ride to Hell, that like biker movie that
Okay.
like
And then you
I
remember
should-
you're on the show this week, and you're like, oh wait.
No. But was it Ride to Hell? Oh, I was talking to you about this film. When you first posted the poster like in together, I was like, what poster? Oh, I never seen this. And I sent you a poster as to what I thought this was. A Hell Ride.
Oh yeah,
Maybe it was
okay,
Hell Ride.
yeah. Just a
Right,
little
which
behind
is-
the scenes. I just use I look up the movie name and then HD poster IMDb, and I use whatever the like main poster is, and that allegedly is the main poster, but it's the worst poster. It's so pixelated and garbage. Like I had to use that one that I ended up using that I think is fan made.
That was
So,
my nickname. in
There's
high
a good chance, yeah, because I'd never recognized the second one you
Fan
posted. That's the DVD
Pixelated
cover from
garbage.
my memory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well-
but I thought it was the one that you did post. I thought it was Hell Ride, which is a 2008 film from Larry Bishop, and it was produced by Quentin Tarantino. And that's a weird film because at one point you get Michael Madsen talking about what the different colored wings on his arm mean. And
Michael
it's all-
Madsen in a Quentin Tarantino produced movie on her.
Shocker.
Shocker.
Shocker. Yeah,
Uh,
but there's one point it's either Michael Madsen or Vinnie Jones. It might have been Vinnie Jones that said the line, but he's got a bunch of angel wings on his arms, and each wing represents eating pussy, and each
Oh,
color
God.
represents the type of pussy. and the purple one is quite horrifying.
How many times?
Well, I'm glad we're not talking about
I watched it
that,
once.
whatever that is. Actually, I'm not. I want to watch that movie. That sounds bizarre. But we are talking about the Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon. I'm introducing a new segment on the show that we've kind of been doing. We don't have a sting for it yet, but I'm going to allow the guest to give us a brief synopsis, a very brief synopsis of the film. So, Chris, why don't you hit us with a brief synopsis of the film?
Well, so back in 1997 and 98, there was these two very popular straight to sort of TV productions called Breaking the Magician's Code and Expose, the the world of professional wrestling, I believe, something with that degree. And they were both sort of breaking the illusions of what magic was. And this film is in a similar boat. It follows a mockumentary style where you get the main actress, whose name escapes me, and I just had the IMDb open. I'm not looking at her. Angela Guthias, who plays Taylor Gentry. She's introduced as the, sort of news reporter slash documentary host to what is essentially a documentary on horror killers. She talks about Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Jason, I believe, was one of the third ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Chucky is mentioned at one point.
Chucky's mentioned. There's even a connection to Black Christmas in this film through the main character, who's revealed to be Leslie Vernon, played by Nathan Basil. I'll go with Basil. Yeah, it's basically this guy is the dude revealing all the magician tricks of these serial killers and how he goes from place to place. When I saw this film, there's two scenes I remember, which is specifically the credit scene and the one scene where he's like doing training and he's running and he's like, it's really hard work to like make people look like you're walking slow. You got to walk slow in the moment they look, and then you got to like book it. So it's lots of cardio in this business, a lot of cardio in this business. So it was like that scene I specifically remember from this film, watching it ages ago. And yeah, you just sort of get this introduction to how a serial killer sets up his playhouse and kills the people that you're quickly introduced to. And he talks about how it's, a scream queen. And without getting into too many spoilers, even though we're going to get into spoilers of this film,
well, that's
the Scream
perfect.
Queen
Because Steve, do you want to hit the brief history? This is our brief history.
A brief history.
So as the name suggests, Chris, since you already kind of dabbled, give us your brief history with this film, and if you have anything you want to add as far as like trivia about it, this would be a good time because you chose this film. We were sitting down inside the Eric Andre show, and me and Steve were still kind of coming up with movies to do for this month, and you said, why don't you do Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon? And I was like, what the fuck? And you were like, just watch it and let me know how you feel about it. And then, well, here we are.
Well, here we are. I'm just pulling up some trivias because I didn't really know too much trivia per se, but my general history with this film is sort of a bag of mixed emotions. Like, I was introduced to this film by an ex-friend of mine. His name was John Maharg. He's my ex-friend because he stole my vinyl record, MF Doom Food. John, if you see this, I want my fucking record back. But aside from that, he introduced me to this film ages ago, and I wasn't too into it. I'm not generally into horror films, but this is one of the few horror films I watched that I was like, this is pretty good. And I remember it. And anytime I talk to horror fans, I bring it up, and none of them seem to have ever heard of it. So that's my sort of brief history with this film for the most part.
Yeah,
I watched it once, and that's about it.
The couple of people I brought it up to, like I said earlier, like knew what it was, but they're like, they've seen all of the Grimoire movies multiple times. How about you, Steve?
Yeah, I had never seen this. I know that I've heard of it before, but I didn't really know what it was about. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm not going to look into this because it's rare that I am confronted with a horror movie that I haven't seen. So I was like, all right, and was pleasantly surprised. At the first maybe 10-15 minutes, I was like, oh no, is this going to be another kayfabe? Please let this not be another kayfabe. And it wasn't. The first time I watched it was yesterday. I was thinking about watching it earlier when we picked it, but I decided to wait until the last moment so that I could have that sort of fresh eyes reaction to it. And I'm also glad that I waited. Yeah, my brief history yesterday. And a little bit again today. I watched a little bit more of it while I was doing some editing. So I wanted to watch it twice, but I didn't have enough time.
Yeah, it's pretty like I basically kind of gave my brief history. Chris mentioned it to me before we saw Eric Andre. I watched it like yesterday as well, but I was excited because the premise is really interesting. It's something that I had never really considered, and they go all in on every single trope from slashers, which was I didn't think they'd be able to like execute it so perfectly. And I will say that if it was just a straight up slasher movie without the conceit of a mockumentary, it's pretty basic, pretty by the numbers. But then you add this other layer, and then you also add switching between mockumentary and like in-world like movie sort of camera. And that just makes it just for like an indie flick, like it just is a really interesting idea for a movie. And I guess I thought that it was based off a comic, but it's the other way around. There's a sequel comic that comes after this, I guess, right? Is that generally what
so
the deal is?
For my understanding, there was supposed to be a sequel movie, but the guy felt that it's been too late, and it's more like it would be more in the style of like a Blair Witch sort of deal, and he feels like it's just way too dated now to make the film, and he's not quite sure how to approach it. I haven't heard anything about a comic sequel or anything like that, unless you guys have found something.
Yeah, they're absolutely. There's a 6-part sequel series called Before the Mask: The Return of Leslie Vernon, which was what the movie was supposed to be called, and it's by the creator of this movie. And I will say, Scott Glosserman, yeah.
Oh yeah, Glosserman.
And David J. Stivey. There's no real point in doing a director talk this week because this is all these guys have done. Like really, Scott Glosserman he produced a documentary about Wikipedia, and that's pretty much it. So we'll probably skip over the director talk this week, but that's that. So
Jesus. He also made a documentary called No Escape Prison Rape.
Yeah, I looked at his discography and like mine's made 4 films, and they don't look like a great history.
I don't think I need to look into what that's about. I think I get it from the title.
The title. Everybody that worked on this movie pretty much stopped. The longest acting career was like up to 2018, and everybody has the sequel movie on their IMDb, and it says in production for the movie, and it's been in production since 2007. So,
but there was talk of it up to as late as last year. So it's not totally dead in the water, but I mean, I would like to see a sequel to this, especially if they use the time gap to their advantage and like modern technology and how that would work out. And I don't know. I think that there is like kind of a meaty idea that you could potentially make if you have the right kind of writer behind it. But yeah, because just the concept in itself is what makes the movie fun. I would argue that at the end, when it just turns into a regular slasher movie, that's when it kind of loses its steam for me. But I think you could come at it from like another angle and go with that sort of documentary filmmaking perspective again and have it be successful. But I don't know. We can talk about that more as we go through the body of the episode, I guess.
Speaking of, do you want to hit us with the body of the episode?
Oh, the body of the episode?
The body of the episode.
That's right. Body of the episode is the time and place where we talk about the movie. I have sort of a rough outline of the movie that I'm going to kind of go through, and we'll just talk about it ad nauseum if you want to jump and do whatever you want to do. But I will start off by sort of just setting the scene for us. And load. There you go. And basically the movie starts out with short summarizing the lore of various serial killers like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, as we said, and it sets the
Well, I mean, where it starts is when you see the credits on screen and it's just throwing all these actors at you, and I'm like, Poltergeist, Freddy Krueger. I'm like yelling
literally Kane Hodder.
I'm yelling horror movies at my TV. Little did I know that seconds later, the movie would then be saying those same movies back at me again, being like, that's right, Crystal Lake is here. We got Elm Street over here. We've got Haddonfield over here. We've got everything. And I do like.
Sir, how do you feel about your neighbor?
Yeah, I do like the fact that this movie proposes that like all of these things exist. Not only do they exist, but they exist in the same universe. So Michael Myers and Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and Chucky, they all exist in the universe of what's his name again? What's the murderer's name again?
Leslie Vernon.
Leslie Vernon. That's the other thing.
His name is actually like Bobby. It's not Bobby. Bobby
Mansuko. Mansuko. Leslie Mansuko. Which is, I think he still has the same first name.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a connection to the 1978 film Black Christmas. He's supposed to be the boy growing up, apparently.
Right. Oh. I feel like Leslie could catch on as a slasher, but they maybe should have gone with like a Jigsaw angle. You know, like give the masked aspect of it a name. Like they don't call Jason Voorhees the hockey murderer or whatever. Like, you know, but you don't hear people calling Chucky Charles Lee Ray throughout the entire movie and the series. You do hear them talk about it, but like when you think of Chucky, you're thinking of Chucky. You're not thinking of.
That Charles said, Lee Ray. When the name Leslie Vernon was said to me by Chris a month ago, I got a weird like pang of fear. Like I got a weird like ugh. Like the name Leslie Vernon sounds like a serial killer name.
There should have been a short middle name,
like Leslie Carl Vernon.
Yeah, or like, yeah, anything. Ray, like Charles Lee Ray.
Leslie Jebediah Vernon.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, like
Jebediah.
The addition of a middle name for some reason always makes me think serial killer. If somebody is like mentioned in their full entirety when you're naming them, it's like they did a crime. They did some sort of horrific crime.
Yeah, like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees both sound like. I think Michael Myers was, since we have Mike Myers also, I always just like name associate with him. But Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees both sound like horror names or serial killer names.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've been around for so long.
Synonymous, yeah.
But like, you know, when people call him Frederick and like in the movies, it's very strange, right? You're like, what? Frederick? That's not his name. His name's Freddy. Freddy Krueger with the gloves, the scissor hands.
It's actually short for
appeal to his humanity, though. Call him Frederick.
Yeah.
Frederick von Krugerstein.
Yes, exactly. No, that's his father.
He worked in another oven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the like you said, the Black Christmas connection in this. What's his name? Scott Wilson, the guy from like The Walking Dead and stuff. He was supposed to be playing the character from Black Christmas to a certain degree for like many renditions of the script, and then they decided to like pull it back a bit and be like, let's make him more of an archetype of serial killers and like the representation of like what it means to be old, become old, and be like a retired slasher villain. You know,
I spent the whole time going, "Who the fuck? It's Herschel from The Walking Dead, Maggie's grandfather."
Yeah, it is.
Took me a minute. Sorry.
Who in the comics has a very different fate than he does in the TV. Let's put it that way.
Listen, can I show you guys something that might blow your mind if you didn't know this already? I'll tell you what's for. I'll tell you what's for right now. Check this out. Check this mind blowout. Oh, whoops. Oh, play. Oh, okay.
Oh,
well,
my mind blowing.
Crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Listen.
You have to sleep on the hide-a-bed with Fuller. If he has something to drink, he's gonna wet the
Is
bed.
that her?
Yes.
Is that her? Wow.
Yeah.
That's why she looked familiar.
That's
yet
why
I
she
can't
looked
recognize
familiar.
her from anything in the
And she's
world.
literally in nothing else. But you've probably seen Home Alone you've had to have seen it at least 5 times, if not 20 times, right?
I mean, easily 20 times or more, at least once a Christmas, maybe, probably. Like
still,
and
it's
I've
on
gone
TV.
through about 38 of them, so give that about 30 Christmases or so.
I didn't realize that either until you told me, Jason, and I was like, oh, yeah, that is her.
Yeah, no.
Les Incompetents.
Les Incompetents.
In 2006, like spoilers, she's final girl, but in 2006, she's like 30-ish. If she was like, a teenager in the late 80s. But I think they're playing it up like she's supposed to be.
What year do you think that Home Alone was made?
1989.
Was it made in? I thought it was made in the 90s. Was it not?
Yeah, I thought it was like 92.
90.
Let me look.
The original Home Alone,
or 1990 maybe.
That's what I'm saying. I was
90.
like 5, 90. I was 5 when that movie came out, so it was made in 1989. It's a Tusken Raider. Sorry. That's an inside joke. My apologies for using inside joke on the show, but
Wait, did you just call her a bush pig?
No, but never mind. Well,
it's so inside that only you get it. It's even inside for us. I don't know. I don't know what this refers to.
Last week, I also interesting. Kate Miner, who plays who they think the final girl is supposed to be. She's from Shameless. She was on a large swash of Shameless, and I spent the whole time going, "Who is this person that I recognize?" So
I didn't recognize her at all.
She's Lip's girl. She gets knocked up by Lip in the last few seasons, and then
I don't know what any of that means.
Oh, okay.
This has been the recognized second segment of Hey, did you see this one? Hey, did
Jason
you recognize that person?
Television that I've never seen.
Hey, you recognize this person? Hey, you recognize this freaking person over here?
This person over here, you recognize this one?
Have you ever seen this person before in another movie? They are an actor.
Les Incompetent is what we call ourselves.
That's also why we call everyone Pissies, because she talks about piss. And we have a segment called The Home Alone of It All, and I guess it's her. She's the Home Alone of it all.
The Home Alone of it all this week.
There you go.
Long conversation, I think. But basically, the conceit of this movie, the next bit that we go to, is the documentary crew led by Taylor Gentry, as we just showed, played by Lenny from Home Alone, sets out to interview Leslie Vernon, a man who claims to be the next great slasher killer. Your thoughts on who Leslie Vernon appears to be as a person when we first meet him? Because I think this guy has an inflated self-worth. There's a legend about him being abused as a child and thrown over a waterfall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me at first, it feels like he's just like got it in his head that he's like, I'm the waterfall kid. It's like, were you though? Are you really the waterfall kid? Are we sure the waterfall kid didn't actually die? There's a lot of sort of loose self-doubt to who this character is, but he's so sure of himself, and it seems like the people he's raised by to become like this Dexter-like character, even though he's not going after anybody bad, he's more or less just going after people, which is pretty twisted. So it's a little closer to like House of a Thousand Corpses in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Like he seems like he's got bullshit up his ass.
It's a universe.
I like him.
It's a universe where the slashers we mentioned exist. So by 2006, they've all come and gone 10 times a piece. So even his mentor Herschel from The Walking Dead, we'll get to it, but he sleeps in like a underground coffin deprivation chamber tube thing and has been killed over and over, presumably. So like this dude,
that's another one of like the fun slasher killer elements. Is it's like, no, we're not being killed. We're like training our bodies so that our heart only beats 4 times a minute, so we have the appearance of death, so we can just lie still and in hibernation for like 3 days at a time, so people think we're dead, and then we can come back and do it.
Even if we get blown up, burned, mutilated.
As silly as this film is, there's a lot of nuance to the explanations that they give for
It feels
being
like when
a
you're
serial killer.
when you're like a teenager or somebody in your early 20s and you're sitting in a garage smoking a whole lot of weed and just having a very stupid conversation about something that doesn't need to have that much thought put into it. And that's what this movie is. And that's why I like it so much, is because this is the kind of dumb stuff that you talk about with your friends, being like, imagine like, they run around the corner and then the serial killer is sprinting to the other side of the building as fast as they can. And then they stop behind a corner and walk out. And that's, basically what he does, right? Like all the things that you would extrapolate from on slasher films that it cannot be explained via magic. They're explaining in how a real person would do it in this movie. And it's
a little
very
bit
funny and charming and creative, I think.
It's a little bit Kevin Smith coded, but I don't mean any of his movies. I mean, like when you just listen to him and Scott Mosier talking on Smodcast 10 years ago, they're just they're just riffing and coming up with ideas. That's like, hey man, if the Thing, well, that's from Mallrats, but if does the Thing have a rock dick? Like that's kind of that same. Well, it's Tarantino.
I understand your point. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess they didn't have
except replace stretchy penis and Superman jizz with how would a serial killer accomplish his goal? Oh, he goes around.
So the real question is, if the Thing, the Rock Man, and the Thing, the Swamp Man, were to have sex, would it just be a lot of mud?
Yeah, it would make gravel. That's what would happen. And but I mean, like the explanations of like. And like
slow Jason down with that one.
Broke my brain. He made me high. He made me stoned for a minute.
Sorry, Steve.
Anyway, yeah, I think that those types of stupid conversations are worthwhile to have with your friends, because it strengthens friendships. But then you can also make a very fun, creative script out of it. Apparently, according to this movie, and this movie did not do poorly in terms of its gross budget. I could not find what the actual budget of the movie was, but from what I've been able to excavate, it was very, very small, to the point that they didn't even have all their locations picked out. I think they shot a bunch of stuff without permits, and like they had to do a lot of guerrilla filmmaking. The director pulled people out of film school, like locally, to get this movie made. And I mean, you can tell, but the movie, the cinematic moments of the movie, the ones that look like an actual movie, doesn't look like the greatest movie, but it also doesn't look like the worst movie. And a lot of the guerrilla shooting for the documentary stuff is super easy to pull off. But there are moments where they're not even really trying to get creative to light things. They're like, no, they're just going to be in a room with no lights, and you're going to have to squint to see them, just like you would if you were in a room with no lights.
It's lit about as well as The Last Man on Earth. It's like, it's not. And Davin and I have gone to great extents about that film and why I wasn't a big fan of lighting. There's moments like those. I'm literally, don't watch this film in the day. If you have sun reflection or a TV screen with a really reflective surface, you need to watch this film at night, because there's just scenes where I'm like, what is happening again?
I was watching part of this movie in the office with nobody else in the office this morning, and with the lights low, and it looked great. And then people started coming into the office and started turning the lights on, and I was like, the glare. So that's a good point. Definitely watch this movie at night. I also wanted to say
blanket over your head.
Yeah, over the screen. I want to also point out that we didn't mention this, that this movie is like a comedy. Like it's played more like a comedy for at least the mockumentary segments. And it actually feels like a Christopher Guest movie, in my opinion, a lot. Through the comedy isn't like outright. It's very dry, right? It's not outright funny, but the situations they're in and the way that Leslie Vernon explains things and looks right down the barrel of the camera reminds me of the way that a movie like Spinal Tap will do similar things.
Yeah, I mean, my instinctual reaction was like, oh, it's going to be like What We Do in the Shadows, but instead of vampires, it's a serial killer. It's not as funny. It's not as like, tweaked writing wise. Like you can tell in those movies, there's a lot of improvisation and a lot of comedy. If that's the point. Whereas this, most of the comedy is situational. There's not really anything overtly comedic in the dialogue or even the writing of the dialogue, but just what they're talking about is funny because of the situation that they're in, right?
Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurdist at the best, and like Leslie Vernon is just like, what do you mean what do you mean what we're doing? We're watching this woman. What do you mean? This is the girl. I've already got this. I wouldn't waste my time and potentially. He's just so like, what's the word I'm looking for? Confident, but also shocked at how disconnected people are to his lifestyle. And
he talks about everything like you should know this already.
Yeah.
We live in a world with horror people, and
but he also is good at
believe...
he's also good at explaining. Like, he's teaching as well. He's like, okay, so this is what I'm going to do, and then he explains all of it step by step, like he's a teacher, and he explains it competently, like a teacher would. So I'm like, this is good, and like, I assume that's what that same conversation probably happened between him and his like father figure or whatever, right? He's like, so what you want to do is you want to go around the house and you want to saw every branch halfway through so that if someone tries to climb a tree, the branches snap. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
If they get on the roof, they're screwed.
Yeah.
And then there's that part where he's trying to tell her, like, so this is how it's going to go down. They're going to be in the bedroom, killed, and they're going to start making out. And she's like, really? Is this necessary? And she's like full on tits out the shirt and hands rubbing on them. And it's like, it's my story.
Yeah. We see that girl grow up. They do basically the scene from, I think, Friday the 13th Part 2 and Part 4 in the barn as like the big, kill box. And to that same note that you're saying with the gratuitous like horror stuff, we see the girl climb up the ladder and see her from the bottom like 3 different times, just to like
straight up
underline, just to underline how like gratuitous these old 80s slashers are. And it's all part of it in a weird, like it has to be like this because that's the way these movies are. That's the way serial killers do things. Which I thought also was really...
it also goes into it, like deconstructs sort of the psychology behind slasher films and like male serial killers versus female protagonists or victims of them and stuff like that. And it does it in an intelligent way without it feeling kind of like preachy and weird. It is a little bit weird for sure, but it's also sort of accurate in terms of the academics behind a slasher film, which most of them pretty easy to kind of figure out, but then a lot of them, when you're dissecting the movie, you're not dissecting the movie, you're dissecting the creep weirdo who made the movie. These are like the fun bits of it where it's extremely self-aware, and it's telling you through the narrative being like that she needs to kill me with my weapon because that's symbolic of her taking charge of the situation and essentially taking my manhood from me. And she's doing it in the way that like a lecturer of film would explain it to his students. But it doesn't feel like overly preachy and like kind of like dry. It's just like, it's also funny because you're watching this man who wears a weird baby mask who murders people explain it like he's a university professor of film.
Also, he paints the same mask on underneath his mask, which I thought was yeah, because the mouth part doesn't have, you can't see through it. It's just a weird. There's like this movie feels like a movie that you would want to watch multiple times, not because you missed stuff, but just to go back into that world and think about it. Think about it and watch it. There's a lot of films you want to rewatch because you missed stuff. I don't think this is that, but I do want to rewatch it just to like be in that universe again and just notice all this weird nuance from this character, because this actor.
Not bad considering
he's very good. Yeah,
his career is not as prestigious as I think most actors would like, but he's still working in the industry. I think he does a lot of post-production now. But he was actually on the Kill Count podcast, one of the episodes of the Kill Count, playing this character like not even that long ago, a couple of years ago.
He kind of reminds me of a original Psycho, like 1960s Bateman.
Yeah, he's doing sort of a Norman Bates, but like
Norman Bates, yeah.
But an updated version, like what would a modern Bates be like? Because Bates is sort of a charming weirdo, right? Like even in those movies, yeah, he goes behind the door and he goes silent and jerks off to you looking through a window or whatever. But when he's talking to you, he's able to turn on that charm, and it's like that's I guess the idea behind the movie is like, imagine people walking around and having a conversation with Norman before and after he murders somebody. What is it going to be like with them fully in on the murder, or at least aware that it happened? And
That's sort of what this whole movie reminds me of. Like, what if Jason could just talk and was just like kind of a normal guy and he just has to do this? Or Michael Myers is a good example too. I have to do this, you know. Jamie Lee Curtis, she's not going to kill herself. I got to go try to kill her. She does have to get away, and I do have to go through all of her friends to get to her. Maybe not. Maybe, you know.
Yeah, depends on the self-revelation. Depends on how many phallic and non-phallic imagery we put ourselves through.
Yeah.
You know,
Did she hit me with the sledgehammer, or did she get me with the axe, or did she crush me with the apple crusher?
I saw a TikTok that was like, Michael Myers is the pettiest slasher ever, because literally, what's Jamie Lee Curtis's character's name? I can't remember.
Laurie
just walks up onto the steps of his house and just to be like, there's nothing wrong with that house, and then you see him from the inside just be like,
and then he stalks her for 40 years.
For 40 years, and through multiple multiversal.
Well, it turns out they're related later on.
Space and time and thought. He caught her whiff on that doorstep, and he's been chasing those panties ever since.
Before we get off the introduction of Leslie, I did want to respond to the question of like, what do you think of this guy? And you know, I do think that he's obviously a psychopath, but he's also like his excitability, the fact that he's enthusiastic about what he does and so willing to share. He's also like a weird nerd, like he likes magic and shit. But it's like he learned like up close magic, and it comes in handy for his slasher killings. Like he can pickpocket you really easily if he needs to. All of that stuff is like super fun. And you know, as I was watching it, I was getting a lot of like Jack Quaid energy from him, where I'm like, you know, if they remade this, Jack Quaid would make a very good
Jack Quaid would make a great Leslie Vernon. Yeah, I agree with that. Why would I learn about Grey's Anatomy? The real good stuff's over here, and magic and close in hand and stuff like that. Those books are real close to his desk. Yeah, he gives me Joker vibes. Like the whole thing. Yeah. It's like if there was like some Gotham reporter walking around trying to do a documentary on the Joker and his like everyday day-to-day living, this would be similar energy.
Sure thing, sweetheart. Come back to my abandoned carnival and I'll teach you all about it. Yeah, that would be pretty funny. That would be a good, like a little good short episode of like a, you know, like a Batman animated series or something. I think the unfortunate reality about Jack Quaid is that he's already a serial killer in a movie, and we can't have him in 2. I don't think they'll allow that in Hollywood.
No, he's a hero now. They're putting him in everything as a friggin' hero. He's Superman. He's Huey.
He's a hero in real life.
He's a hero in real life.
What's he a villain in?
He's in Scream.
Oh,
he's Ghostface. Yeah.
Spoilers.
Well, the movie came out like 5 years ago. Jesus.
Okay. But that's the whole thing. That's like Skeet Ulrich.
Fair, I didn't even know that, but I don't follow the Scream series.
Ulrich was on a tour in the 90s, and he almost spilled the beans on that he was Ghostface, because that movie has the big twist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a twist in the movie as well. He's like, he's like the character who's obsessed with this, because in the Scream universe, they make a franchise called Stab, and it's basically like the story of the Scream movies being made within the universe of the movies, and he's like obsessed with those movies to the point that he becomes the new.
Because Clive Barker made that.
Wes
Anderson made that. Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson Stab. Wes Craven made Scream.
In the universe, Stab. Wes Anderson was making the Stab movies, and everything
just does excellently
symmetrical and pastel colored.
Symmetrical, past-colored shots of people getting stabbed. I think there's like an SNL sketch that's something like that. Anyway, sorry, Chris.
Okay. You guys want to hear really like insanely high thought?
Yes.
I believe films are a connection to alternate dimensions and universes that actually exist, and every writer and creator that creates either a story of some form is connecting into that universe, and we get to a point where universes start doing meta versions of their own universes, which just further enforces the entire fact that those universes are a thing. And to further expand upon that, there's a film with buddy from, God damn it, his name. I'm wearing his shirt. His Hannibal Lecter, and his name is
Anthony Hopkins.
thank you very much, Anthony Hopkins. He stars in a film called Slipstream, where he's a director, and he starts getting like mass like dementia, and he starts falling into the universes of the film he's made as a director. And this is a theory that I've thought of for
Wes
many
Craven
years.
does it twice with 2 different franchises. Chucky, Seed of Chucky does it. They're making a Chucky TV show. Hellraiser, I guess there's like a video game one, like
Hell World.
They all eventually will get meta, and this sort of.
But Chris is saying that if you write a story, you're a god, basically. That's what you're saying. That's what you're saying.
There's an episode of Extreme
yes,
Ghostbusters
essentially, yes, we're all gods.
Hey, one at a time, people.
Okay,
Sorry.
yes, you're correct. We are all gods in our own subjective universe, living our own experiences, because if you were God and you had all omnipotent power, all omnipotent creation, you could literally do anything. What more are you going to do with yourself other than to destroy yourself and relive all the experiences that you could through all the various things, from being a plant to being a human being? And we as human beings, we're in such a, what feels like a universal bubble, that our imaginations are connecting to waves of energy and temporal dimensions that bleed into our consciousness, and it drives us to write those stories out. Whenever I've sat down to write things, I am sitting there, I'm just watching it as it's happening, and I'm trying to, like, I'm not actively struggling to put the words together. I'm just sitting there watching something. I'm watching a dimension of people living their lives in this manner, and we get just butt glimpses of it. And
butt
to
glimpses.
A degree where we butt glimpses, especially depending on the film.
Perfect.
And
Steve,
that's our superpower as human being gods. We can tap into dimensions that are very many.
Yeah, we didn't hit it before, but as soon as you were like, I have an idea, and then you start talking your own metaverses, and we all sort of right into that. I watched the first season of Extreme Ghostbusters this weekend. That show compared to the original Ghostbusters series is much more related. It's much darker. It's much more clearly the writers were very influenced by horror. And there's this one episode where there's a character who's a writer who has a name that's similar to R.L. Stine, but kind of, I think he's supposed to be Clive Barker.
Name's BJ Back.
Yeah, something like that, actually. But he gets like ghost tied to a chair and forced to write. And
he becomes a ghost writer? Oh my god.
Basically. But then the lights appear and start fucking with the Ghostbusters, and they have to get him to write that the Cenobites can actually be defeated. That's kind of like the kids ending. I will say, as an aside, the Extreme Ghostbusters TV show, every episode just kind of ends. They just got to, all of these ideas could be like full movies, but they're always like, they just defeat the ghost in the end. And very quickly,
Ghostbusters burst in and suck them in a trap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They figure out what the weakness is, and they just get to it. But this one kind of stuck with me because they looked like Cenobites from the Hellraiser universe, which I was like, this is a fucking kid show. It's so weird. Like the children are not going to get this. It's going to be the parents at the time. Watching along.
Why does this ghost have its genitals flayed and stapled to its thighs?
And stapled to its throat. Yeah.
Freaky.
Old vagina throat.
Yeah. The 90s were a different time, folks. I mean,
just a flim flam man. Sorry.
So I mean, after we're introduced to the slasher killer, this is when we start to kind of jump into it. We get to see his recon. We get to see his preparation. We get to see how he fucks with people and how, it's all part of the process. You gotta, pick your mark and then stick with them and figure out the best ways to kind of mess with them here and there to get their adrenaline up to make their life into a horror movie for a bit. The funny part about it, though, is that even when they confront her at the very end and they're like, don't you remember all these crazy things that have happened to you the last few days? She's like, no, what? I don't, not really.
You were recording it, woman. What do you mean you don't remember?
What's the deal with his actual like lore? So it's just this crazy person that has taken on the story that we talked about earlier, where like there was a kid who, you know, killed his parents because he was abused, and then the town was like, he's possessed by the devil, and they kill the kid. And now every year this monster comes back, and the kids go to the house where he grew up and like get wasted there. And that's sort of the like Jason Voorhees Camp Crystal Lake of it all. That's kind of what I understood it to be.
Yeah, that's basically the gist of it for the most part. He you know, apparently was thrown off a waterfall, and yeah, these kids are just like,
Which
it's a
makes me
haunted
laugh.
house, let's party. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay.
In a
it's just
universe
like,
where Michael Myers exists and Jason Voorhees exists, which are very similar stories to this, they're like, yeah, they're stoked about it too. They're like stoked.
okay, yeah, because one, it's like, we can have our own town legend and be a part of it. Two, are these tales of Michael Myers and Jason and Freddy actually true? Because they see some news, and sure, they might see some news about it, but it could just be big mainstream media lying about something. You know, like people can easily dismiss it, and then it becomes like a urban legend at some point. So if you're thinking it's an urban legend, you're gonna risk it. You're gonna go to the house that people don't tell you to go to. You're gonna go party and do the things you're not supposed to do. Meanwhile, there's this dude that's setting up like mousetrap IRL throughout the whole house. You know, putting his cheese and his barbed wire in every corner he can.
It's real Kevin McAllister coded energy.
Yeah, we do get the trap setting, but we also get sort of like his explanation to the crew about how people, when they're in these horrifying situations, act insane. He's like, they'll be doing the dumbest stuff. They'll go upstairs to the attic. They'll trip on flat ground somehow. Like it's wild. And
they won't think to smash out the ground floor windows, but they will smash out the third floor window and fall out of it.
Yeah.
Then they're on the roof, and then they're screwed. It's like he just looks at everything so analytically and just like almost scientifically. It's just like he's playing with rats at this point. He's like, what can I get away with this year?
Yeah, we do get that moment you spoke about earlier, where he's doing sort of his training regime, which is a lot of cardio and strength. Which, you know, he doesn't look strong, but he's extremely strong, and he can probably run forever. Which is also just kind of like a fun detail to throw in, and makes you logically be like, oh, okay, yeah, he's got to be like an Olympic athlete to be able to murder 8 teenagers without them getting away.
Yeah,
Jason Voorhees is like specifically mystical in that way, where in the video game he's got an ability where he can just sort of like wraith through the forest or through wherever you're at. But now it'll be fun to go back and play that game and be like, he's sprinting because he goes back to his weird shack in the woods and just does pull-ups and fucking push-ups and just, you know, goes on. Yeah.
He's got temper.
And he's obsessed. He's obsessed with the idea of the survivor girl, but we know it as the final girl. I'm wondering if in 2006 the concept of final girl wasn't coined yet. Is that possible?
It's possible, but it's also possible that, because there's a movie called Final Girl, that the term final girl may have been in some weird capacity like Ouija boarded, where you can't say it. You're not allowed to say it in a movie because it's owned by some company somewhere.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's real or not. I'm just saying that that's possible, because I've only ever heard it called Final Girl. I've never heard it.
I've heard it called Scream Queen.
Scream Queen
That's
just
a little
means
bit broader.
Scream Queen just means an actress who became famous for a horror movie. So like Jamie Lee Curtis, for example, is like the queen of the Scream Queens. Like she's top level Scream Queen. Even the guy in Freddy Krueger 2. I mean, a lot of these people will also be called Final Girl because most of them went on to be the final girl in the movie that they were in. But yes, Scream Queen is more like your claim to fame was horror, and you went on beyond horror to make other things.
Okay, because I know there was like that reality TV show there for like a season or two back in the early aughts.
I remember that. What was the concept of that? I don't even really remember. I just remember.
I think it was they did various challenges that just seemed like horror. I don't honestly know. I never really watched.
I think it was just like
shooting myself right now.
I think it was just like the ploy of some perverted Hollywood producer to like be able to put a bunch of hot women into precarious situations. But I think also, if I remember this incorrectly, flag me and flog me and burn me alive or whatever. But I think the prize for that show was that they got to star in a horror movie that was going to be made after the fact. Was it Saw 6?
There were 2 seasons, and the first one got a role in Saw 6, and the second one there was 2 seasons. I said that Saw 3D, which I guess was probably Saw 7.
Technically, yeah, Saw 3D, Saw 7.
So was the pervert James Wan?
The pervert was Jim
He produced the
Ackerman.
pervert. No, he just funded.
Oh, Jamie King was on it though, as one of the announcers.
I have no idea who that is.
James Gunn was one of the judges.
Oh, I remember James. I think I've seen a clip semi-recently of James Gunn on that show and being like, this seems really grimy. I don't like this. I don't like this at all.
Just run through this blood tunnel and
also, as we were talking about this, I was remembering a little bit more about like the lore, because they kind of brush over it pretty briefly, and then they show another part of it later with the newspaper with Zelda Rubinstein, famous poltergeist psychic. If you guys aren't familiar, the librarian.
Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar. She is famously in the film Southland Tales, which is a film I desperately want to talk about with the both of you, because I made Davin watch that and he hates me for it.
Oh,
and I don't think, to my knowledge, neither of you have watched that film.
I've seen it. We'll have to do a Donnie Darko month where we do Donnie Darko 1, Donnie Darko 2, which exists, and Southland Tales, which are all in universe together.
Steve, have you ever watched Southland Tales?
I don't think so. I'm sure if I
Justin Timberlake in it.
Oh, what is it about?
It's
Like,
about
it's a bunch
like
of
The
different
Rock
little
and
stories.
Justin Timberlake, and it's honestly it's a prophetic vision.
It's
of
like
current
post-apocalyptic
times.
where the states has gotten nuked and there's like little sections.
It's all in Los Angeles. It's got like a huge cast of like
It seems
actors.
like an AI generated script that you're describing to
It's
me.
a little bit. It's kind of there's actually a really fun scene where there's a Jeep that fucks another Jeep and you see a cussy.
So, Leslie Vernon was said to have become possessed as a child and killed his family before being thrown off a waterfall by the townsfolk. Yeah.
a cussy gang in effect.
Meep.
Yeah, but I mean, so the library scene also. Hold on.
Let's say whatever we want here on
I
Hey,
think
Did
the
You See
police
This
are
One?
coming to arrest all of you right now.
This is an event episode.
Oh.
Yeah, this is an.
That fart was so loud it completely knocked out your audio.
Yeah.
This is an event episode because Chris and I, well, we've all been friends for some time now, and he actually got us into the United Federation of Podcasts, and we just haven't had an opening for him to come on. So you say whatever you want. If you want to talk about
busy.
yeah. Well, you run several podcasts, you know.
Yeah, I know.
I run a podcast. Steve runs a podcast. We're all podcasters. We're all talking about stuff.
We're just crazy people making things on a daily basis because we're just trying to stave off the thought of death for another lonely existence of a day.
Oh, I think about death all the time.
I'm thinking about death right now.
Oh God!
The void's coming.
All right, back to the film. So, we get more insight into him as a guy, which is interesting, but it also shows that he has sort of a deep philosophy about his situation and what everything means in terms of how he looks at these situations, and whatever everybody has sort of a place within it. And it is kind of interesting and cool. And you could see this sort of mindset being stretched out into a more complicated and dark film. So it's kind of interesting to see these ideas put on screen in something that is on the surface pretty lighthearted. And it kind of ebbs and flows where you get these moments of genuine and sincere performances from this actor who's then kind of acting like just kooky goofball planning a murder seconds later or seconds before. In particular, like the sequence where he's putting on his fire retardant gel that he's added. What is he? Oh no, it's like a formula of preparation H mixed with fire retardant gel so that he doesn't bleed as much. It's like what boxers do.
It's like what boxers and MMA people put on,
so that when you get a cut, you're not bleeding everywhere. It stems the bleeding. But it also kind of makes you look pale, which is cool. And he's just like rubbing this goo all over his face, but he has this sort of like heartfelt.
And he makes that weird acting choice that there's like a little glob on his face that he like pulls and like it snaps back and then he like pulls it off while he's saying all this. He's just I don't know. He's a very good in the moment actor, and that they didn't do many takes of these scenes. They didn't have the budget to like.
No, they were like, we're only allowed to be in this barn for 3 more hours when the chickens wake up and the farmer shows up to.
We've only got so much digital tape to run on this camera.
Yeah. That's the other thing is the parts that look like movies. They probably realized the extent of their budget in terms of filming on film and having to do everything on digital cassette and being like, okay, we got this much amount of time. We can probably film 5 or 6 scenes and then the end sequence. Let's try and do this wisely.
They definitely burnt that barn down because I was expecting that shitty digital fire that you see in like sci-fi channel movies, and like shitty digital movies. That barn burned down, right?
I mean, it's cheaper to burn a barn down than it is to burn film, especially at this era when it was being replaced, right? So that probably wasn't even that crazy of a budget. It was just probably finding a location or a farmer who was going to knock their barn down.
You need this barn burnt?
Leroy's got to knock this barn down. Let's just shoot on Leroy's property for like 3 weeks. We'll use his shitty looking house. We'll burn his barn down. We'll clean it up when he's done. He'll thank us for it.
Yeah.
They probably spent the majority of their budget on Kruger and Zelda Rubinstein and the film that they needed for those like 8 scenes in the last quarter of it, and whatever effects that needed to go with that. And then
that being said, I believe that Robert Englund is like notorious for doing stuff if he thinks it's cool, where he's just like, yeah, I'll do it for like food and a ride, gas money. But like, it's not to say that he'll do anything. It's just like if he likes something and it's low budget, he'll show up. He'll show up for you. He was in Sliders. Remember Sliders?
Sliders, yes. I've been trying to get
paid for Sliders though.
Jen L. Rossman to watch Sliders.
He definitely got paid for Sliders, but
that was like a TV.
I feel like if you were to approach him with something like this and say, here's the concept, this is what we're doing, and you're going to be playing a Loomis style character, but we want you to sort of have your own personal brand attached to it, because he does basically play the same character from Halloween.
Loomis, yeah.
He's even dressed the same as Loomis, but he has his sort of twist on it,
and he's sober. He's not visibly wasted.
Oh yeah,
he's like a murderous shroot.
Yeah, or so a shroot. You mean just a regular shroot?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like Robert Englund's got like such a unique face, right? Like even when he has 4 hours, 5 hours worth of makeup on his face with like burn scars, you can still it really just bleeds through, right? Like he looks like Freddy Krueger. But yeah, the library scene in general, I think is kind of the most. It's the most fun for me. I like all the Home Alone setting up of the traps and stuff, but I really like how he not only is he like, I'm prepared to chase them around and kill them, and I'm strong enough and fast enough to be able to do it, and I've prepared the house to have power outages and branches that'll snap. But he's also doing like psychological stuff. He's like, and then the door is going to slam shut and she's going to be like, ah! And then going to make it so that she finds a story that's like connected to her somehow. So it really freaks her out. and then she's gonna go to the librarian. The librarian's gonna be like, "It's just a story," or some bullshit like that, and then it's like everything plays out exactly how he's predicted it.
Let's go to the microfiche. I do like at the near the end of that scene too, where it's a mockumentary style, so it's cutting all of this with a camera that's just like moving around. It's shaky, and when it cuts to him on top of the book stacks, the library stacks, and he's just like hopping around on like such a weird visual, because up to this point, I think the library sequence is the first time we see him in the costume, right, doing the full slasher thing. And he's already explained that, you know, he's got almost superhuman abilities because of his training regimen. But the fact that he's just like climbed up on top of the shelves and he's jumping around, that's when you're like, oh, what are the rules for this guy? Like he's got to have some element of supernatural power on top of training that hard.
I don't think he does actually have any supernatural power. I think he's ultimately just moving quickly enough, much like, you know, a ninja would in some sense.
Okay.
Like he's studied and he's trained to a degree that's made him have the ability to make people look one way, and then he'll show up behind them and scare the shit out of them. And that's his favorite game of all, is making people go, ah, what the, just freak it.
I mean, not to like be reductive to what you've said, Jason, but it's like, you know, they did set up that he loves magic and shit. So it's like,
right,
there are all these little things that perfectly work their way into like how he would be able to accomplish all these things without the aid of magic, which is fun about it, right? Like even him getting shot.
He is a fan. He's a fan of the greats too. Like he's looking for a virgin, which is a classic. It's a very Jason Voorhees.
That's
thing.
like, and that even to me is like, when he's like, you can just tell, like, I'm like, oh, does he have magic power? And then it's revealed, like, no, he was just wrong. Like, he just
completely wrong.
Like, she's a virgin for sure. Look at her. And it's
but
like,
is he wrong? Is he wrong?
Or is that to set up
the thing?
The real
I believe that's all just a decoy because he's actually after the main girl.
Like
the documentary.
I called that myself, like in my notes right here. I'm like, is it just Leslie Taylor all along? And then of course, and I don't think the point was like it's supposed to be this big twist or revelation. I think that you were almost supposed to be like, well, clearly this is all a ruse, this is all set up, and that's the interesting next level gimmick, if you will, of what this killer is he played this crazy long con mind game and found this documentarian who fits the bill. Although I'm unsure, that scene where she's like hitting the wall and she's laughing and she's like, I should have seen it all along. Does she actually say outright that she's a virgin?
I don't think so.
I can't quite remember if she mentions if she's a virgin or not.
Or does like the guy that survived say like, oh shit, you're not a virgin.
I feel like it was mentioned
happens?
by one of her camera crew sort of deals, and she just was like, kind of gave him a look.
Yeah. And then Like a Virgin started playing during the credits. Yeah.
And on the topic of supernatural powers, I think it also at the end of this movie sort of alludes to the fact that it almost seems like the entire film is him doing a ritual to become that Michael Myers, that Freddy Krueger. Like you have to do a series of steps, and if he's ultimately successful in those steps, he will evolve to the next step of being almost like a mythical, magical, murderous being that can be played in Dead by Daylight. You know,
yeah, which should be a character in Dead by Daylight.
Yes, he should be a character. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. He should be a character in Dead by Daylight. I have watched the creators of Dead by Daylight play their game on Twitch and message them about this movie. And they're like, what's this movie? And they were like, what's this movie? I'm like, you should look it up. It's a really good one. Make him a character. And I'm still waiting.
Well, hopefully they'll put this character.
They've done everything up until like ancient Japanese toilet ghosts. They'll make it to
vampire movie
Leslie eventually.
They just dropped a 2v8 mode, which I'm very interested to play.
Well,
2 killers, you say?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting if they did that, and then people are like, what is this movie? And then went and watched this movie, and then that's how we get the reboot or the remake. Or, like I said, there are comics. There's a 6-episode run sequel comic that just adapt that. I'm obviously, if it's bad, it's bad, and don't do it. But
maybe don't say that until you've read the comic.
I feel
super
like
racist and homophobic, and you're like, ooh, whoops.
I feel like
done.
the best place for this is to be like a Netflix horror based show. You know,
Yeah.
like how they do horror well, or A24. If A24 were to pick this up and reboot it, I think they could do a really good job of it because they're the kings of horror at the moment. But I feel like, yeah, it could play well as sort of like a short Netflix series. I do like the idea of Jack Quaid taking over the role, but at the same time, the way this film ends, they either do the show as a continuation off of this film, or they just do the show as a redo of this whole story, which I would be okay with. I would like to see this with a bit of a higher production value. But at the same time, I do enjoy this film as it is because the editing on it's very seamless. The way they go from their handheld cameras shooting their documentary to handheld cameras following the people go through the scenarios to film cameras filming the people in their scenarios in those more grounded real moments that's meant to actually instill fear, as opposed to like the safety of the documentary mockumentary cameras where you're like, it's kind of gets silly and you get that setup of silly cushion for almost the first 2/3 of the film, and then at the last it's Murder City.
Here's
The Return. So I guess
remake.
this is
Before the Mask.
the way that it says Before the Mask implies that it happens before this movie, but I guess it's
Yeah, it feels like it's a prequel.
but it's called The Return of Leslie Vernon.
One of the covers does have the girl does have Taylor on it. So
yeah. Well, I mean, he's connected to her now. He got his amulet of Dembala for, going through the ritual. He's got a voodoo curse on him now.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, right? Like it's like he's a burnt he's gone through the burned cocoon, because like for the most part, we've talked about the majority of this film. In the last quarter of it, Taylor, it wants all the action to stop, so she proceeds to try and get ahead of him, but he's also ahead of her because she's following into his plan as he's planned it all along. She ultimately grabs her axe, takes off her shirt, faces him head to head, kills him, lights him on fire, burns the whole barn down with him in it, and then you're like, okay, end of story. But then you get this credit scene where he's being wheeled into the morgue, and as the credits roll, guys are doing their paperwork, checking his body corpse, and then he sits up. So it's like, is that a part of his training? Did he sit up and survive a burning of a barn? I'd like to think probably not. But did he complete his ritual and actually become the enigmatic super serial killer Leslie Vernon that will be spoken of throughout the ages? I guess we'll have to read the comics and see.
Yeah, Jason seems to like. I feel like in Friday the 13th Part 2, he's a living person and he gets killed. And
let's not go down this rabbit hole.
Michael Myers is a living person in the first one, and he gets killed. And then when they come back, they get murdered in comical way. Yeah, right, because the first and second movie are like one thing, but they get murdered in more elaborate ways because they have to put the evil back in.
His mom is the killer in the first movie, and then he's the killer in the second movie, and then the third movie is.
No, I know. I said in Friday the 13th Part 2. I'm saying like he gets killed at the end of Friday the 13th Part 2 because she goes.
Yeah, he doesn't really die until 5. I want to say he gets fucked up a lot, but he's not. 4 when he gets the Chetty to the head via what's his name.
That's the reason I'm named Jason. Whatever the one that came out in 1984, he gets killed for real. And then my parents were like, it's fine. That name is not going to be synonymous with this serial killer from the 80s. It's cool. He won't exist for the next 30 years. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, they were wrong.
Freddy versus Jason. I'm watching Freddy versus Jason in like the early 2000s going.
I know a lot of people named Jason that are around your age, so I don't know. Maybe you have
I know it was a very common name in the late 70s, early 80s. It's one of those names that it's like a Braxler, where Braxler's only going to exist for like that very small window of time.
I do like the idea of him surviving via some sort of ritual that he's completed, and I think that would be a great way to, start the next movie. But I would like them to do, if they were going to do a sequel, it should be some sort of Lego sequel style. We didn't really talk too much about his mentor, Eugene, I think his name is.
Yeah, Eugene and Jamie is the name of the woman. So we're basically at that point where he goes to see them. He takes the crew to see his mentor. She's just like, this is the part that made me wonder the validity of them being supernatural or like zombies or like undead, because the Eugene does kind of sleep in a hyperbaric chamber buried underground. That also looks
it's
like
during the scene where they're explaining the ability to slow your heart down. So it's like
exactly. But then when they go back to the house and she's like cooking them dinner, I'm like, don't eat that. But then at the same time, it's like that they're probably just humans that need to eat food, so it's not that gross.
I'm sure, unless it's other humans that they're eating, then it could be a little gross.
That would be
no, it was a broccoli tray. It was a broccoli and carrot tray, which I thought was stupid and funny.
That was actually just from the catering table. They had to feed the crew, and they're like, "Okay, save some of it for the scene." Oh, so everybody ate the real food? Oh no. Okay, just use the vegetable tray. But yeah, I mean, I do like the idea that he was originally meant to be just the character from Black Christmas, and eventually they moved away from it. But the illusion is still there, and the homage is still there. But it would have been nice for him to be like, my first time I killed was back in 1982 when I killed a bunch of people on Christmas. Then I threw a nun down
1982.
But we don't get that, but it's still fine. I do like the idea that he was mentored though by a serial killer, and I think that's what would have been kind of interesting is if they have this plethora of slasher villains at their disposal, and they name drop so many of them, but that is also one of the ones that people wouldn't really immediately know who you're talking about if you were to mention them. I mean, I can't even think of what his name was in Black Christmas. Let me look at it here.
I think it was supposed to be whatever Bobby's last name was, Munusco, whatever.
The Allusion to Billy Lenz.
It was very like Italian. Mencino. I said it earlier, and that was it, but now I can't remember. I also want to point out during the scene where they're having like the barbecue. Chris, you're a Haligonian, right?
I have been known to be one, yes.
Did you notice that those sausage links looked almost exactly like Brothers Pepperoni when they were biting into them? Like, and I say that because it's not weird to bite a sausage and it looks like sausage. But it is strange to bite that kind of summer sausage and it look exactly like pepperoni from the East Coast.
Yeah.
So I just looked it up. They filmed this in Oregon, right?
Yeah, they definitely weren't in the East Coast.
Yeah.
They were nowhere near Halifax for this.
You can tell they were in Halifax because of the sausages.
And the way that the links were shaped, like that horseshoe shape that pepperoni comes in when you're in Halifax and Dartmouth.
Yeah.
But I got a weirdness.
Well, here's the thing. If you got to do multiple takes, it's easier to do multiple takes with pepperoni than it is to do a sausage that could get cold and give somebody food poisoning.
True.
So,
I'm wondering if they're in Oregon. Go there and find that exact same kind of pepperoni. Now, I know that
be surprised.
Steve's like, what are you talking about? It's just pepperoni. You don't understand. Brothers Pepperoni.
You don't understand.
It only exists in one place.
Literally, it was just kind of turned my brain off when you talk about specifics from Halifax. I'm like, I don't fucking know what you're talking about.
Listen, it's fair. It's absolutely fair. Like, listen, I sympathize with him, and I too miss Chris Brothers Pepperoni. I'm a vegan. I've been a vegan for 10 years, and I really miss Chris Brothers Pepperoni because prior to that, I moved here to Toronto for like 8 years prior to that. So I haven't had Chris Brothers Pepperoni in almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
It's damn good pepperoni, man.
It's so fucking good. Like when my friends go home, I'm like, bring me back them links. I tried to get my friend to send them to me one time and it just died in the mail.
Chris Brothers Pepperoni and Olin's Export.
Yeah. and Schooner.
Schooner.
Hey, what's up, Dave? It's always weird
Big
to
Dave
bite a summer
Mater.
sausage. Yeah, it's true. Dave. You're right.
So sausage
Dave
talk
Mater.
aside,
I can't help but agree with Dave on that one. You gotta eat the pep. I love a pepperoni. It's just inferior in Toronto and the rest of the world. Sorry, this has
That's
been
true.
Toronto. This has been Pepperoni Corner.
Yeah. East Coast Pepperoni Corner with Jason and Murphy.
mhm.
Davin knows. Actually, no, Davin doesn't know. He doesn't eat meat either.
We'll have a. We'll have
he
a
might.
taste
Actually, I don't know. I feel like Davin, if you happen to be listening to this, let us know if you've eaten Chris Brothers pepperoni recently. Yeah, I know Davin eats fish, but like, I feel like Davin would cheat with the occasional Chris Brothers pepperoni. So
They don't make
Davin-
fish pepperoni, those brothers.
Ugh.
Isn't
I'd try it. They kind of do in Newfoundland.
that
they-
just
they have,
jerky?
like salt cod, I would say. Yeah,
God.
salt cod. Did you guys get the vibe that Eugene felt like he was washed up and kind of like a hack now, and
Or he's just
trying to-
retired.
he's trying to impart this knowledge onto like a new generation, and I almost feel like he's kind of like,
Man.
oh, this guy's hubris is too. I know he's kind of like the father figure to Leslie Vernon, but he also, I got this vibe that's just like, you better not, you got to do this exactly by the book, or else the ritual won't be complete, and then you'll just be like all the others that failed before.
Well, I mean,
you.
if there is a ritual involved, then it's possible that Eugene missed his window of opportunity to complete the ritual and never became the mythical monster that we've been talking about. And now he really wants someone to be involved in somebody crossing over into that level of slasher villain. So he's helping. He's past his window of opportunity closed, and he wasn't able to do it. So now he's got to make sure that this young buck is able to pick up where he left off.
Okay, so there's two connections to Black Christmas in '74.
For some
Although
reason,
never
I thought you were gonna start talking about sausages again, and I was like, oh god.
Although never stated directly, it was intended that Eugene is an older Billy from Black Christmas when Leslie's real last name is revealed to be Mancuso, Mancuso. This could be a nod to Nick Mancuso, the uncredited actor who portrayed Billy in the original 1974 Black Christmas. So that the whole theory that Eugene is that older supervillain, for lack of a better term, serial killer is, I guess, but the fact that he is that one, but he didn't quite make the echelons of the Krugers or the Myers or the Voorhees or the Chuckies. It would make sense that there's this, like, he's molded some young orphan boy that fell off a river's edge and tried to form them into his ultimate version of
He's
a
like,
killer.
what my problem was? I didn't have a horrible, like, traumatic trauma happen to me. I never got thrown off a waterfall when I was 8. This kid did, though. He's got the built-in slasher villain backstory. We can work with that.
And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, he'll be the greatest murderer of all.
Yeah.
There's like a weird reveal when we are introduced to the Ahab character, which is like the Loomis.
It's a Rahab.
Yeah.
That this guy's like an imposter. He's just a guy who knows the story of Leslie Vernon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that made my imagination sort of run wild with the idea that this guy just like knew the story of this character, knew about Grand Echo or wherever this place is, wanted to be a slasher, knew Eugene, and traveled up here to sort of take on the mantle of this folk character, which is a really interesting idea, because I don't know, like, what does that mean for the other slashers that do allegedly exist in this universe? Like, how does it come to pass that a charlatan essentially just takes up this mantle and
manifestations of the collective consciousness, good sir.
He's from like Las Vegas or some shit, and he acts like he's from Las Vegas. You're right.
Yeah, he probably is from Las Vegas.
He's a failed Vegas magician. He didn't make it on the stage on the under the glowing lights, and he had to move to an apple orchard and become a slasher murderer.
Because one night he got drunk and he killed a poor street worker, and he got the taste for the blood. So he's like, I need to go to Oregon, and he tripped across Eugene because Eugene was like, I need to kill me a young manlins. I want a nice thickened young manlins to slice up. And then he got to know this guy, and he found out about his bloodlust, and he turned him into a serial killer. He gave him a little backstory, and he made his whole consciousness revolve around the mad concept of being a serial killer, because he feels that his murderous ritual of finding the virgin and having the virgin kill him will turn him into the god entity that is feared by all, because there's so many god entities that are powered by the collective consciousness.
So Leslie Mancuso likes slasher films and is just in Vegas or Reno, or wherever they say, and he's just killing homeless people.
Yeah.
Get this rage out.
All right. When you said he trips on him, I literally pictured him trip on him on like the side of the highway because he was pretending to be dead. He's holding it for 3 days or whatever.
Yeah, he's like, next person that's gonna stop me, I'm gonna kill him. And it's just like, oh, Eugene, wait, you like killing? I like killing too. Well, let's become friends and let's go kill some peoples.
That's a great Louisiana accent or something. I don't know what you're
know.
doing, but I like it. Killing someone that isn't directly related. There's got to be a twist that Leslie Vernon kills news people or something that didn't come to pass. So we do.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the theory that like he set it all up it's pretty much confirmed by the end, but it's also a looming thing throughout, because you're like, why would he ever invite a documentary film crew to document all this? If it's going to be released, it's then just going to be evidence of all of the horror that he's committed, right? So
yeah,
definitely part of it all along that he's like, no, I'm going to just kill all of them afterwards. That's what's going to happen.
Well, he like stalked. He stalked her from the get go, and then I thought Todd's death was heartbreaking because they were homies throughout the whole thing. So there's this thing in this movie where we don't see the cameramen through the whole movie until it switches fully to movie form, like towards the end. And during all of this, there's a guy behind one of the cameras who is a character in the movie, Todd, who's always commenting kind of gross, funny things about all the little nuances that Leslie has about the different more pervy stuff that he does. Like, you got to watch them from afar, and you got to make sure that you get, that one scene that you mentioned earlier, Chris, where it's like the close up of just boobs was so like,
it was pervy. It was like a 13-year-old boy shot at,
I think it's every 13-year-old boy concept of what a horror film is. There should be tits,
but even just like it's boobs that are like just in the screen, and then hands touching them like they have never touched boobs before.
Yeah, exactly.
Okie doke.
They reveal. There's the nipples are erect. They're squeezing. It's It's this is everything for the producer and the director to squeak it out to.
Well, the sexual elements of this whole movie are all very porny, like even when they walk in on Katie or anyway, when it's revealed that she's not a virgin, the scene that they walk into, it sounds like somebody's getting murdered, but then it's just her, just like reverse cowgirl.
They're having sex in a very aggressive and non-virginal way.
And like I said,
definitely
earlier,
not Mormons.
We get the upskirt like 3 times for some reason, which is very bizarre, but very much.
Listen,
like
if you look at the director's filmography of 4 films, the other 3 titles give you a pretty clear picture as to what this guy is.
Increasingly more disturbing and perverted. Yeah.
I'd say that he came out of the gate with the most disturbing one. You're like, oh god,
yeah. You like the prison rape movie? Well, check out our Wikipedia movie.
I specifically didn't want to mention it again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the fact that he got anything beyond that first film, and then it's like I am curious to see what his Wikipedia film's about, because I feel like it's a dig at Wikipedia, because maybe he didn't like news being. I don't know.
Yeah. Ironically, we can look it up on Wikipedia.
What it's about
ironically
in the synopsis seems like it's an early movie revealing that you can put whatever you want in Wikipedia, which we all know now.
I
But
think,
it's so old
the
that
best thing to be said about that Wikipedia movie is who gives a fucking shit.
who gives a shit? It's
exactly.
irrelevant information now because Wikipedia, by and large, is a good source of information as long as you have media literacy.
Let's put it this way: this director's a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. But at this point in the movie, the doubts start to arise from the crew, and the planned killing is approaching. And Taylor and crew they have ethical concerns about the involvement, and they're questioning whether or not this is all real. And they there is that air of like, is this guy for real, or is he just like he's setting all this up and he's not actually going to follow through with it?
Guys, I have proof of aliens in my backyard. We're going to go to my backyard and I'm going to show you guys aliens. I'm going to show you how I trap the aliens and I speak with the aliens. You're going to be naturally suspicious of anybody that says this shit shite.
Yeah.
What, is that why you didn't want to come look at my aliens, Chris? I invite you every weekend and you always
that's just semi unhoused people screaming because they have mental issues because you live next to a.
Oh man. So for those of you who don't know, I do voice acting and I record pretty much all day every day. And there's a new person in the neighborhood who lives in the building next to me, which is in fact a mental health facility. And I think they have their keys on them because they just keep setting off the car alarm on their car in the parking lot over and over and over again all day long. Like if I show you the bloopers from my my recordings today, it's just me being like, and then the murderer discovered the murder weapon in the room where he murdered. And you're like, beep, beep, like, over and over again. In World War II, the destroyer class Carlisle is the most powerful.
We need to put a phone number on the screen right now to be like, if you feel like you're having issues,
contact this
because
number.
It's very real. No, don't. BetterHelp's not the way to go. That's just people fresh out of school or not even.
Also, I'm not making fun of people with mental health problems. What I do not like is somebody setting a car alarm off over and over and over again. No matter your I don't know. Anyway, I'm just very annoying.
I almost said no.
Listen,
that's crazy.
The real cure to mental health is just take LSD and scream into the void like any sensible human being.
Yeah, that's what I do. No,
we've all been there, or at least mushrooms. I've taken acid.
This is no means an endorsement of any form of medical treatment. If you actually need mental health, go speak to professionals. Do not listen to us. We're shitheads.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
All for the sake of a laugh.
No,
but he does give the crew the option to get out now, basically. Leslie Vernon. Oh yeah, Leslie Vernon reminds me of the Deep from The Boys. Did you guys get that?
Ooh, you know what? I replace your Jack Quaid, and I actually want the Deep in this role.
Yeah. What's that?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that Jack Quaid, because you're supposed to be a little bit charmed by it, Leslie, I think, whereas the Deep just comes off as vapid and douchey and bad in every way. But I mean, I guess I haven't really seen that
charming moments.
I haven't seen that actor in a lot of other stuff. So like to me, I'm just kind of deep pilled or whatever. Like I can't see him in any other light. Whereas Jack Quaid, I've seen him in quite a few things, and I know the versatility that he has, and also the character of Huey on that show is a lot deeper than the Deep. Is that a pun?
True.
It's not a pun. No.
The thing about Chance Crawford, who plays the Deep, is he played a lot of like heartthrobby kind of character.
No way.
This guy with a perfectly
the hottest guy ever played a heartthrob. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't believe you.
But the thing is like this dude, Nathan Basel, just kind of has a similar kind of look and vibe.
Yeah.
Build. But it does feel a lot more like the original. Well,
that's the other thing is that I think he's supposed to be sort of like
Norman Bates,
a very middle of the road. Well, even Norman Bates was meant to be like attractive, right? Like, whereas I think this guy is supposed to be a face in the crowd that you wouldn't really look twice at, right? Like, you don't want to cast somebody who's so beautiful that you have to look at them when you pass them on the street. You want to cast somebody that has a relatively forgettable face. And I would say, not to knock Jack Quaid, but he has sort of a very normal looking face. He's not like
Except that he's like
striking.
6'8".
That's true. Yeah, maybe we'll have to shoot him from low angles or high angles, I should say. But this guy's also fucking huge. Like he's tall as shit. I mean, at least I think so. Like that comes off that way in the movie, but it might be just his
I don't know.
lankiness.
He gives me Dexter Morgan vibes, like in the sense that
Yeah, I
how he
mean, in
tries to
terms of their
downplay
physical appearance as well. Like when it comes to their faces, they do have a similar structure as well. But I think that for me, it was more the attitude that kind of made me think, hey, this is like kind of like if Huey was a straight up psychopath. Huey, you're crazy, man.
Oi, Huey.
Homelander,
Did you
don't kill
chop
me
his
wife.
leg off?
Yeah.
Homelander nicked me boy.
He done killed me wife.
Me wife. That's very TikTok.
I was doing a Star Wars recording today, and I had to do a character called Dengar. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dengar, but I gave him basically the butcher voice, where I was just like, "Oi, Boba," over and over.
Dengar fever.
Boba. I even when I was writing it would write Bo B-O-W Ba, just so I remember.
Boba.
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 Anyway, back to this. I mean, I think it would be fun to pitch your like ideal sequels to this. I think, Chris, you've already sort of been leaning. You've been doing it a little bit light throughout, but I don't know if we want to keep talking about the movie itself. It kind of just wraps up the way that you would predict it would wrap up. There's not really a huge twist to it, I guess, except for the reveal that she's not a virgin. But I think that
Well, before we fully move
The
on,
girl you think he's chasing is not a virgin.
let's just
right.
let's take a little walk down what these main characters would look like. The
Mammary Lane. Cut
Mammary
to
Lane.
Mammary
shot.
lame.
Cut to perverted
This is-
shot of boobs.
This is
on-
Nathan Basel. Okay.
Okay. He kind of looks like I
Dexter.
was gonna
Oh,
say.
yeah.
Yeah, they look a lot alike.
And here's the deep.
Well, there we go.
Now that everybody's horny,
Go back to the first
thoughts?
one. He looks a
Yeah.
little bit like Ethan Hawke, and
He does look much like Ethan Hawke and Kevin
And-
Bacon a bit.
and
I
also
see
maybe a
Kevin Bacon.
little sprinkling of Christian Slater in there. Hey,
I
it's
can
me.
see
Mm.
Christian Slater.
What are you, the caviar police?
This guy looks like the guy from 6 Feet Under.
Yeah.
Heyo.
Ew.
He looks like the guy from the villain from the movie Gamer. Anybody seen Gamer?
Remember Gamer? We'll probably cover it. We'll probably do a video games month and cover that piece of shit. So you know that.
I, for some reason, own
Ready
it
Player
on my
One.
Microsoft account. I think every once in a while you get free movies on there because I have that and I would never have purchased it. But I watched it recently and was like, "Yep, this is
Wasn't there
exactly-
a gaming movie that involved the Nintendo glove?
the Power Glove."
The Power Glove? I feel like there was a movie that involved the Power Glove. If
The
you guys do a
Wizard!
video,
No Wizard.
the Wizard, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, there was an episode of the X Files that was just the movie The Gamer, or the movie Gamer. Remember that one?
Also, Lawnmower Man is basically
Also Lawnmower
Gamer,
Man.
except
I didn't
the
realize
concept of Lawnmower Man is insane. Take a man with a mental deficit and make him
Yes.
super smart by attaching his brain to the internet.
I didn't know that about that movie
ChatGPT?
until more recently than I should have.
I watched it recently and was like, this movie is also not as bad as I thought it was. And I mean, if you watch the trailer, it almost looks like one of those fake trailers from Tropic Thunder, like the Simple Jack style, like just the way
I think
The
Simple
trailer's
Jack
cut
is based off the character from Lawnmower Man, based on the trailer I watched recently.
I don't think that's I watched the movie and it's not as bad.
But he's got
in
the same
movie.
hairstyle, and doesn't he have overalls?
I think that the character was based on all of the characters that are problematic, not just one specific one.
That's
So
fair.
Keanu Reeves?
You got a
That's
little
Johnny Mnemonic.
You got a little bit Forrest Gump in there. You got a little bit of I Am Sam in there, some Lawnmower Man, some
I am
Rain
Sam.
Man. Yeah.
didn't
I
do the
am
voice.
Lawnmower Rain Man.
I'm Lawnmower Sam.
I am a Lawnmower Rain Sam.
Would
Would you like a box of chocolate? Or whatever.
I know pie.
in my actual notes, I have a lot, but in my like where we are in the movie, we're kind of at like the night of the big night, the night
It
of
was the big night. Everybody get your
Big burning.
Googles on. Yeah, this is where he has his sort of weird little, like, it's Christmas for me, and if you don't appreciate Christmas Eve on Christmas Eve, you have to take a moment to breathe, or else it's gone and you miss it. And that's a sentiment that I thought was actually kind of quite nice, because everybody has nostalgic feelings for specific moments in their life, and it's really hard to recreate them. And Christmas being one, but I specifically have like emotions attached to different holidays, like Halloween being another. But I never really considered that, where it's like if you kind of sit and just allow the moment to pass without sort of focusing on it, you will let it pass. And then he starts to cry because he's so happy.
I was gonna say there's that
was
scene
a
where he's
good-
like
yeah.
so happy about the situation that he's been working his life towards.
Mhm.
Just before we get into that final bit, though, like I thought the movie ending of this was going to be much different. I thought Taylor was going to get more Stockholm syndromed, because there's a scene around before this point where they're talking and he's sort of explaining, what he's going to do, and he's sort of he's very charismatic, and the way that she looks at him.
Well, that's this
At
scene
certain
that we're talking
points?
about right now. Like,
That's exactly this. Okay.
and
I thought that it was going to be more like it ends with her donning the mask, or they document the whole ending of the movie and it goes off without a hitch. I didn't think this movie necessarily needed like a twist. I thought that it would have been fine if it just played out. Like there's that whole sequence where he explains the whole thing. He's like, for some reason inside the house, everything moves slow, and outside the house, you got to get them outside the house so you can move at regular speed. But I've already booby trapped everything, so it's going to work out great for me. I thought it was all going to play out more meticulously within the confine of the mockumentary, but as we find out, that's not the case.
it turns into a regular movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a moment where it almost seems like, they have a moment of a long shared look that in most movies implies some sort of romantic connection between the two, which may not be unnecessarily or necessarily untrue in that moment. It's like, it's clear that they feel something for one another, but if the theory of him planning all of this is correct, then he knows that he can't. He's like, I can't like this person. I have to like let this person attack me and kill me and survive this encounter. And
there's a moment it felt like she was sort of going to become like the Amanda Young of it, like Amanda Young from Saw, how she becomes
the new Jigsaw.
Yeah, the new Jigsaw in a way. It's sort of, there's that moment where it seems like she's kind of falling into the ploy, but her
and I mean, a movie like this is
humanity
somewhere where
took over.
You can, it's almost like logical for the movie to go in that direction because of how much she is involved in everything that he does and everything that he is sharing with her, and he's kind of like bearing himself in every way to her. So she's not really seeing a complex person who's fake. She's seeing the real person, and the longer she's with him, the more and more of him she's revealed. And she, it is sort of like the recipe for a romance, and you're kind of almost rooting for it in a way, but at the same time you're like, no, stop that. Stop thinking that way.
I think I got Stockholm syndrome by this movie up till now.
Yeah, she's got that like murder podcast girl vibe, those girls that really love murder podcasts. She comes in with that same sort of energy, and she's super curious about it. She's, trying to do exposés on Myers, Voorhees, Kruger, and all the others, and she thinks she's got the ground floor on a new one, and she's sort of enamored and fascinated and sort of, you could say, mysticized by Leslie's actions throughout the film. Ultimately, until she's faced with the realization that she's actually witnessing people die. She's documenting people die. She's an accomplice to people dying by murder. And through all said murder, she all of a sudden snaps into her like conscious of humanity and is like, "Oh no!
Yeah, there is that
Oh
very real moment
no!"
where they get to the house and he goes into the other room, and the first kills happen off screen, and it zooms in on her face, and she realizes that she's now an accomplice, very real accomplice to a very real murder, and has all of the premeditation on videotape.
Yeah. She realizes, wait a minute, I'm in a horror movie. I'm in a
literally
horror
movie
right now.
and a true crime documentary. That is
I am
happening.
the podcast. The call is coming from inside the house.
The podcast is coming from inside the podcast, which you can find here each and every week on Hey, did you see this one?
Did you see this one?
I also have a note here where I was like, I hope he just starts breaking all the rules. I was hoping that he would Leslie Vernon would also have a moment where he's like, I don't have to do it like this. I don't have to do it by the book, so to speak. And he just, even though he set up all these elaborate things, and you know what, it kind of plays out like that, because when things aren't going to the plan that we as the viewer thought they were going to, before we really truly realized that it's all one big scheme, it kind of felt like Leslie Vernon had to like reposition what he was doing. But honestly, a little theory from me, I think that he all of this all along.
Yeah, I agree. I
All along.
I agree. All along. It was his plan all along. But that being said, if they were to continue the story as a sequel, whether it be a series or another movie, they could very much set it up like all the tropes of a film, but he's breaking them and subverting them each and every time by doing, ABC, but he ends up doing EFG each and every time.
I think that the
No D.
beauty of this movie
is
that it does not
until the end.
It does not require a bunch of subversion of expectation throughout, because the whole movie and concept is a subversion of your expectation for this type of movie right out of the gate, right? Like,
yeah,
for them to try and rewrite the formula it's silly, and you don't need to, because you're presenting the idea of a slasher movie in a fresh, creative, and interesting way. Why mess with that formula when you can show it in a brand new way that is funny and exciting?
Think about how complicated this movie would be if Leslie Vernon existed in your dreams. If it was like a Freddy Krueger,
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that it was they chose a very
He finds a Necronomicon in the middle, or an amulet of Shambhala. We don't need it.
Yeah.
And even like what you were saying, Jason, if he started breaking all of his own rules, that would add sort of a layer of complexity that wouldn't really be needed, and would probably be a hindrance to the remainder of the movie. Because when the documentary patina is broken and we're taken into the movie itself, like the movie becomes a movie at that point, that's the subversion, right? We're no longer in the movie we thought we were in. We're in a completely different movie, which is the movie of what's happening. And it's like, okay, I guess
if this became a big franchise, maybe by the third one, now for some reason Leslie Vernon is attacking from the dreams.
That's the issue as well, is that like the draw of this movie, people would assume that it is the documentary aspect of it, right? And so they would be trying to figure out how to break that over and over again, which it is technically, and I think they would be right to do so. But like the Blair Witch, for example, was wildly successful, and then the second movie was just a movie.
Yeah.
And the events of the movie in the first one were just a movie, I think. I can't remember exactly how it. Oh, it's like the movie came out.
They were exploitation of workers in film.
The movie came out as it did in reality, but in the reality of the second movie, it was a real movie. It was a real documentary, and people are going there to investigate or whatever. Anyway, the second movie bombed, and it was bad. And it's. I mean, I remember thinking it was like kind of all right, but like I'm sure I'm wrong. I haven't seen it since I was 12 or whatever it came.
But again, that second movie leads into the theories of all, where it's like the collective consciousness makes the demons of theory and mysticism. And I'm getting a little drunk to honestly pull words out of my brain. Listen, the thing is, Blair Witch 2 sort of leads into the theory that, you know, we can manifest these creatures and these mythical serial killers through sheer belief and collective consciousness. Is that what I'm going for? I don't know.
I think so.
Well, I mean,
I like the concept that it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy if it just exists, and you follow the tropes and you follow the mysticism of the idea that, like, any serial killer is a pretty mystical idea when it's built up in the media. Like, think about Jeffrey Dahmer.
No, I don't want to.
Well, don't. But think about how that's just a dude who was just killing people.
Anytime somebody says think about Jeffrey Dahmer, all I think about is him eating someone's flesh, and I'm like, ugh, ugh, ugh. No,
But
You
that's
want to watch a movie?
Yeah, and that's
Why
the
does it
fucked up-
smell so bad in here? Oh, my refrigerator is broken.
My refrigerator is broken. Ha 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 ha.
Do you like
Here, I
bacon?
made you a drink. Drink it.
Uh,
Don't mind the white powder that's floating at the top.
A
So
movie that plays out similarly to this in a way is, remember that Ryan Reynolds movie where
The
he's
Nines?
the one where he's a serial killer and he's a cannibal.
Oh, the one with the fridge and he's got the cat and the dog that talk to
talking
him.
the animals. Yeah,
Yeah,
that movie's
yeah.
great because they do this thing in that movie where he's living a very like Disney kind of lifestyle from what we're seeing, but in the third act, spoilers, it switches over to we see what his fucking house actually looks like, and there's just like gore and viscera everywhere, and like his fridge has like blood
Body parts and
of it,
shit.
and
in
it's
it,
just
yeah.
disgusting. And I feel like this movie sort of is that same. We're seeing a surface level version of the serial killer, right? Who thinks that he's in a Friday the 13th movie, but it turns out that he is actually just a sadistic, weird killer psycho. The thing that makes us think, Chris, you made a really good point at the beginning that even though Freddy Krueger and those characters exist in the real world, it still is just kind of lore. It's just an alternate universe where it's just lore and more like it's like in our real world we have the like, don't say Bloody Mary in the mirror, right? Obviously,
yeah, that's well. I mean, when at the beginning of the movie, she's not presenting it like Freddy Krueger is a demon demon that comes to you in your dreams and makes them come real and kill you. It's like, no, Freddy Krueger died and he murdered a bunch of kids, and his legacy runs so deep in this area that people believe he can even get you in your dreams. So like the dream aspect is the urban legend part of a real life serial killer. And
take that 300 miles different from the city that it's in, and it's just like, why is everybody freaking out about nightmares? What's going on over there?
Exactly.
And in that universe, we're on the 6th one, and they're still like, people can't kill you in your nightmares. It's like, no, there's that scene in the 5th one where they have that stack of documents. It's like, no, look
at all this evidence.
This is proof. And the one guy's like, nah, falls asleep immediately and gets killed.
What do you mean the earth is burning up? Climate change, science isn't real.
The earth is flat.
This is shit I've read on a daily basis today in the past week. It's people will only believe what they want to believe due to their subjective experiences in their own little universe, because they're all just living in a bubble trying to get through their existence. We're all just trying to get by and avoid the ever aspect of the next consciousness. So it's not hard for there to be a mythical being that will kill you in your dreams, or a mythical doll that will kill you because it wants to be a mythical doll that kills you, or a swamp monster with a hockey mask or whatnot. These things aren't out of the realm of possibility because there's so much
He's a
possibility
lake
in the world.
monster.
He's
He's a lake monster. I'm
lake
going.
monster, swamp monster, whatever.
It's not
You
that swampy. At Camp
He's
Crystal
water
Lake.
based, all right. He's soggy. He's a soggy stab boy,
He's drippy.
and he's very drippy. And
He's
it's
Well, I mean,
the
I do-
drippiest.
I mean, that's
He's
that's
very
what,
drippy.
that's what fascinates me with monsters and stuff. And I've mentioned it on the pod before. I was a monster boy, and I became a monster man, and I have loved monsters my whole life. I just like graduated.
In
from...
fact, you talked about them on a cryptozoology episode of Trivial Debates, another show on our wonderful United Federation of Podcasts.
a debate I lost. But I graduated.
Collusion.
I graduated from this the stuff that kids like Dracula and Frankenstein to these my Dracula and Frankenstein, Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. And so I really do like the idea of the mythologies, and I become fascinated with the lore behind them, even though there's such huge inconsistencies within those franchises. Something like this that presents it to you like it is a ritual, and if you complete the ritual, there could be some sort of magical ending to the race that you're in. Even something like, what's it called? Cabin in the Woods, where there's an entire government facility that's devoted to ensuring that a ritual is fulfilled on a yearly basis, where they, have to activate a monster, and the monster comes. They have like a whole vault full of monsters, and it's up to the individuals within the situation to begin the ritual and all that kind of stuff.
I was going to mention that because it's plausible that Cabin in the Woods is a part of this whole universe, because even in Cabin in the Woods, I think like Freddy Krueger's in one of the vaults and stuff like that. Like maybe
Leslie's in there. Maybe that's where he went. He's in the vault.
Maybe Leslie's in the vault right now. Like it's really funny because like this character could be a modern day Voorhees. The 90s was taken over by Voorhees and Myers, and Leslie Vernon could be this modern day version of that if they were to expand upon this character, and ultimately make all the horror films of past a grander lore and a grander tapestry of like horror knowledge. This potential series has the ability to interweave all of these horror films that we've grown up watching throughout the years, and that's what sort of makes this a fun theory in of itself, is that it has the potential to take these modern day mythos, these characters, and turn them into the Draculas and the Frankensteins and the werewolves of yesteryear. In the future, in the year 3034, people will have the same reverence for Voorhees and Krueger and Myers and Chucky and all these as we do today, as we refer to like Dracula and werewolves and Frankenstein and Medusa and the various forms of cryptozoology that
I would even argue that it's already getting to that point where you can show somebody Dracula and they'll know it's Dracula, and you can show somebody who's never seen a Friday the 13th movie, Jason Voorhees, and they'll probably say either Jason or Friday the 13th. They'll just know what it is, even having never seen it, which is great. It makes me happy. It makes me happy that pop culture has a pretty large impact in certain ways for things that I like. It can also have the opposite effect for things that I don't. But I like that people know who Freddy Krueger is, and I like that people know who Dracula is, because I love those things.
And from my point of view, I like it. I always talk about this.
Your mic cut out for a second there.
You're good.
Oh, I always talk about how like I was scared of horror, and through this podcast, I've developed a great respect for horror and a love for horror. And being able to know all of these tropes puts me at a great advantage to be able to talk about them, which I wouldn't be able to do. Like if I went into this movie, it's not a particularly gory movie, like even if I was still afraid of gore and stuff, it's not, there's no real, the goriest part of the movie is where he like digs that gardening tool into the guy's chest and like opens it, and you see it from like afar, and then it zooms into him presenting the guy's heart to his hand.
Yeah.
which was awesome.
Drops it into his hand and he grips it. It's like, I don't know if I would be doing that with my final breaths. Just be like, my heart, let me put that back in.
But I really love that. I really love all of this, all of these horror tropes, and it really boils it all down in this movie to like a really interesting, palatable, fun way to view it. So I'd like to give a recommendation to anybody that doesn't really like horror to just watch this, and you'll get sort of a primer on horror. I think
You'll get the magician's code of horror.
I think that, yeah, it's true. I think that this movie is so delightful.
What wrestlers don't want you to know.
I think that this movie is so delightful to people like us because of how much we already are steeped and enjoy horror as a franchise, or sorry, not as a franchise, as a genre. But I don't think that it's necessarily unlikely that someone who's not familiar with all the tropes that he's referring to wouldn't find this to be charming and fun. I just think that it's almost like a love letter to people who have seen every Jason movie and have seen every Freddy Krueger movie and Chucky movie.
It's crazy that this is the first time love letter to horror has been brought up, because that's absolutely what this idea came out of. Clearly some friends, watched every single horror movie under the sun. And then they were like, well, what if, because in 2006, it was like the rise of reality TV was happening. And
no, it was the rise of Leslie Vernon.
But there weren't a lot of, I think Christopher Guest was the only one. He's the master of mockumentary. I talked about this on another mockumentary episode. It wasn't even, because I didn't bring up Christopher Guest on the kayfabe episode. But I digress.
That's because our brains were bleeding from watching that movie.
Yeah,
I feel nauseous.
We've never torn a movie apart.
Watched it. I read the synopsis and I'm like, no.
It could have been this though. If it was made by competent people, a wrestling movie that is this movie could have been good. And the reason I chose it is because I didn't watch it. I didn't know what it was.
Well, this movie has sort of like airtight writing to a degree. It's not necessarily clever writing, and it's not necessarily like groundbreaking writing in any way. It's just solid storytelling from beginning to end. Whereas kayfabe was like, I have an idea for a scene. I have an idea for.
I was also theorizing that like the reason why there aren't a bunch of these is because the idea, if you're not like a prolific filmmaker or writer, you can't really expound on this idea that much. Like if you don't have the money put into it with writers and another director that takes on this idea, if you're just like a couple of friends and you put this out, it stands alone. That's all you need. You can't have this movie have several sequels, because trying to evolve this idea, you can't really evolve this idea.
Well, so you have to think about time, because horror is one of those genres like science fiction and westerns that go through these ebbs and flows.
Right.
There's a massive uptick popularity in the genre, and then it just drops off and you don't see anything for a long period of time. Right now, I think we're in a pretty big upswing of horror in terms of quality horror that we're getting.
Like A24, like weird.
Yeah.
Like,
we can sit here and name like a million, but like smart and compelling and well-made horror, as opposed to trash horror, which is constantly always being made. Right. And this came out in an era where horror was in sort of it's a low point. There were things that were being made. It wasn't.
Was Saw 1 even out in 2006 yet?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Saw came out in 2003.
Was Paranormal Activity out yet in 2006? Because I feel like there was a time.
It was 2008.
There was like a decade where Saw and Paranormal Activity were that was what.
That's what I mean. Is like that's the downtick. It seems like it's an uptick, but it's just they're just making cheap ass trash. I mean, some people love Saw, some people love Paranormal Activity. I'm not saying that you're wrong if you love those things. But during that period, that was all that was being made, really. They were just putting money into those things because it was making them bucket loads of money without them having to spend a lot of money. Yeah. And they weren't giving things like this proper budgets to be released, right? And even if this movie did well enough to warrant making a studio remake or a reshoot for it, they wouldn't have given them the money to do it.
Are you telling me that production companies would prefer that they film a film in a dirty bathroom for like $20,000 that can make like $10 million, and they want to make 20 more productions of those?
Well, the thing is like
over
this
everything?
this is
This is what
clearly
you're
this
telling
movie
me?
is clearly a
That's
direct creation of a vision because it's an indie movie. It's a direct creation of an idea that some people had, and they made it, and it got created, and it did fine.
I mean, it made almost $70 million, and I can't imagine this movie cost more than like $1 million to make.
Yeah.
But
So, and that's rare because if this script was bought out by like a Paramount, they probably would have fucked it up and made it open ended for multiple sequels, and it might have done bigger numbers.
They would have cast the Deep, and they would have
They would have got Chance, fucking whatever. And it would have just like we would still be watching these goddamn goddamn Vernon movies.
But that's the thing. I'm saying that they could do that because there is a lot of opportunity for Leslie Vernon to be a modern day Jason Voorhees, a modern day Krueger, a modern day, what have you in all these horror elements. That's a possible thing with
I think that it's hard though, right? Because like to create an iconic murderer slasher villain is not. It seems like it should be pretty easy to do. You just have to make a couple of them until people start to pick up on it. But the only one that's really happened in the last like 25 years is Jigsaw, where people know who Jigsaw is. I mean, there's other ones. There's the
Babadook is the one that comes to mind. There's a lot of talk about Babadook.
I feel like if you showed a picture of Babadook to somebody, they wouldn't be like, "That's the Babadook." Not like.
Well, that's the thing. The whole mythos behind Babadook is you don't really know what it looks like.
Right, but I mean, what I mean to say, like, there is a visual representation of Babadook in the movie, in the book and stuff, right? So there is visual iconography for him. I just don't know if someone would recognize it. And I think that, like, even what's that movie with the clown that came out recently?
Terrifier.
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 No,
Terrifier.
People know the It clown.
I mean, you're right. You're right, Chris. But
yeah,
Terrifier.
But I mean, that's
no. But yeah,
established a long time ago.
Horror fans know the Terrifier. General populace.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm talking like the iconography that exists for something like Chucky does not exist for something like I'm trying to think of another one that came out. One of the weirdos from those James Wan movies, like Malignant, or the
Barbarian. I don't even know the conceited Barbarian, so maybe it's not a good example.
I mean, Barbarian
Long legs.
Long legs. I don't know enough about yet. I want to see it, but yeah, I'm sure there's.
I want to see it, but not in theaters.
It does look pretty spooky.
Yeah.
Anyway, the point that I'm making is that creating something as memorable and as long lasting as something like Jason Voorhees, it took them even like 3-4 movies before they gave him a hockey mask and created a real icon behind him.
Imagine if he was just Baghead with the eye cut out for like that's what we know
forever.
Yeah. Ugh.
But
maybe
Idaho Potato Man's on another slashing spree.
Old Potato Man.
But I mean, I would also be all for Leslie. I keep wanting to say Leslie Nielsen being
behind the
being
mask,
a figure
right?
that we all remember and love as the
Don't call me Shirley.
as the apple core killer or whatever he is.
Listen, I want to move into. Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you?
No, I made my point.
Okay, I want to move into the final girl, as it were. Basically, Leslie, they get into the house. I mentioned earlier, they see the kill happen, and he gave them a note before, but at this point, he's like, "You guys gotta go because I'm doing this, and you've already seen my barbarian tendencies come out. I've killed people."
Well, the real reason he's like, "You have the look of I can't believe you just did that on your face, and I need you," or no, the look of we can't just stand here and let this happen, is what he says. And
yeah,
so
and Taylor is like,
"You're gonna fuck with my vibe here. You need to get the frick out of here."
Because Taylor wants to help these kids, and this is when it full on switches over to movie view. When they go back to the van, and she's like, turn the cameras off, and it just switches over to like horror movie.
Which I also will
And,
say is when I kind of started to lose interest. I
That's true.
don't dislike this movie, but it is when the movie stopped being special for me, and I was like, okay, now I'm just watching it every other horror movie I've ever seen.
So
Yeah.
there was that moment where the last part of him showing Taylor what he was going to do is they introduced the apple cider press, and I knew that was going to be how he died, right? And it kind of is. But before we get to
I gotta
that,
admit, I don't quite remember that part.
I know, and I didn't either. And I was like, "Oh, are they gonna expand on the idea?"
They have
And then
a whole conversation about the apple press.
exactly.
I remember the apple cider press conversation, but I don't remember anybody dying by apple cider press.
Well, he died.
No, that's how he
gets his
dies.
head crushed. She
So he
crushes
gets
his head.
The camera guy, or she crushes Leslie's head?
Leslie's
Leslie's
head
head.
gets crushed in it at the end, and he goes, "I knew it," before he dies.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay.
not dies. I
Gets
guess.
his mask off.
Yeah.
I
We'll
might
get
have
to that in
stopped
a
paying
sec.
attention at that point because all I remember is him burning to death in a bar
also
because
happens,
she
yeah.
stabbed him with stuff. I remember my specific recollection of the events is she stabs him with the scythe harvester wheat thing, and then barn burns down and he becomes a burnt crispy husk. I don't remember
She has
his
to
head
catch
going
him.
through a press.
So
He
We'll
just
get
gets
to
his
that in a
head
sec.
put into the press part, and he's getting
Yeah.
squished. And then he has his
the crew follows Leslie into the party where the killings are supposed to occur. Leslie dons his mask and prepares to his killing spree. Taylor and crew intervene, attempting to warn the potential victims and stop Leslie. They soon realize that Kelly is not the actual final girl when she's getting banged out and railed. Hi guys, it's me. I'm telling you how the movie ends. And Leslie's true target is Taylor herself. Leslie reveals his master plan, showing that everything, including the documentary crew's involvement, was part of the setup to ensure a legendary slasher narrative. And then we get the final confrontation, which is a chase through the booby-trapped house. Taylor's now the final girl, confronts Leslie in a climactic showdown, and in a twist of fate, Taylor manages to outsmart Leslie, trapping him in one of his own devices and seemingly killing him. Now, there was a segment that we didn't talk about where when Leslie Vernon killed his parents, he hung his mother in the apple orchard. And the thing is on this day, the apple orchard, the dirt of the apple orchard turns to mud, but the water of the mud is blood, which I thought was a really cool thing. And they never
blood
really
mud.
blood mud.
That's what happens
never
when
really
the thing and
showed
the thing fuck.
But what's great about that is Todd, the cameraman who I mentioned earlier, is kind of the pervert character of the movie. And that's another thing too. They had all of the classic stereotypes in the house, like the jock, the sexual couple, the
stoners,
But
the really
then-
stoned guy. In the credits, it's stone guy and the really stoned guy.
That's awesome. But there are other archetypes that the crew of the filmographers encompass, which is the pervert, which is Todd, the guy, just guy who makes it to the end, and Taylor, who's the real final girl. So there's a scene where Todd runs off. He's like, I'm gonna draw him away from you guys, and he's a big fat guy, so it's like that guy is fucked, but he actually makes it. He actually makes it away. I don't know what I said that's a reference to, but shout out to Toronto. Toronto's a great creator that walks around Toronto and does a live stream on TikTok, and it's very good. I managed to walk into one of them one time recently. It's very funny. But he runs off into the ether, and Leslie Vernon manages to do that, catch up to him immediately and kills him. And when he dies, he's stuck in the mud and he puts his hand down, it's covered in red. And I was like, oh, that's how they're going to do it. And when Taylor manages to make it away, she does wander into that apple orchard. And they do have a final showdown, a pre-showdown sort of, in an orchard where he's chasing her around, and as Chris mentioned earlier, she does take off her sweater to reveal that she's got a white tank top on, which is fucking by the numbers horror final girl shit.
As she grabs the axe.
She grabs the axe. It is booby trapped, which was a thing that was telegraphed early in the movie because he booby trapped all the axes. Even though she grabbed a different axe, the axe was still booby trapped because she chops him, and it like, I guess it got stuck in him, or it just like it stopped him up for a minute.
It was gimmicked.
And it was gimmicked, and it was just like the
handle.
The handle. Thank you.
What would we do without you, Murphy?
It's true. Come back every week.
Handle. Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll have Murphy and Nolan, Cass, and Tim all on the show at the same time, and we all talk at the same time, and it'll be the greatest episode of Hated to See This One Ever. I do have an idea for a Too Many People podcast. That said, they do end up back in the barn with the apple cider press. And he ends up with his head in the press. And she's just twisting it and twisting it, which was the first time that I was like, does he have some supernatural shit? Because she twists real bad.
Could be
he
the
pulls
mask.
his mask off. True. And he said, what did you say that he says at the very end, Steve?
He says like, I knew it, or something like that. It's like something confirming that he's like, I knew you were going to be the one to do it and survive.
You're the one
Yeah.
gonna make me the murder Jesus.
Yeah. He reiterated the entire plot of the movie and then died.
Exactly.
That's
the
end of the movie.
That's the end of the movie.
Until the credits roll.
The movie ends with the crew shaken but alive. As the credits roll, there's a final scene in the morgue where Leslie, presumed dead, shows signs of life, hinting at his survival and the possibility of a sequel, which it's almost been 20 years. I don't think we're going to get it. And if we do...
Hey, they were talking about it last year. It might still happen, guys. We should all pitch our sequel ideas right now.
I'm in. Oh, do you want to do a quick sequel pitch? Because my pitch sequel is simple. Have you guys ever seen the movie Spree? We covered it on this show in the early days, I think even before Steve was on the show. And it's about this guy who
there was
like
no
an
show
Uber
before me, Jason.
It's true. There were only 14 episodes before you were ever on. But one of my favorite episodes from that block was a movie called Spree. And the movie Spree has that guy from Stranger Things that looks like Ben Schwartz.
Okay.
Joe Keery. And in this movie, essentially what happens is he's a rideshare driver who is so desperate for social media attention that he sort of decides to go on a killing spree, and he films it all through the lens of his phone. And I think an interesting way to at least reintroduce this character is to have a copycat killer who's just doing this on Facebook Live or something. And that's sort of the first element.
That would be fun. Yeah, that would be a fun idea. My brain went in a completely different direction, to be honest, but I like the idea. Well, because I do like the idea that everybody has a phone on them at all times, so everybody has the ability to film everything that they're doing constantly, and upload it live while they're doing it. I mean, that's kind of the concept of the Batman, right? Riddler just constantly up to no good and putting it on social media to his incel army. But
how's Clayface going to deal with that in the sequel?
Yeah, Clayface just has a bunch of phones stuck in him. He's like, accidentally going live constantly.
Oh, my live again. Oh, I made some questionable conversation with that man.
So I was thinking it would be kind of fun if Leslie was able to, set up everything in this house. Why not do it again, but on a much grander scale? And over the last 20 years, he's somehow been able to gain ownership of a full fucking mansion. And
I was going to say mansion.
And he once again is inviting a documentary film crew to explore the mansion. And we could even hide that it's him for a chunk of the movie, and we could have like a full Norman Bates thing where he's like the
hotel manager, and he's showing them around the hotel, and he's got cameras everywhere, and he live streams the entire thing to the internet. He has like confessionals, almost like the Real World or something, where he goes into like a room and he's like, okay, so what I'm going to do now, and he's just explaining to everybody how he's going to set up the murders. And you could even have it be like a riff on Saw and like other the you know, he's doing the classic 80s slasher films. This version, he could be doing the movies that became popularized in the early 2000s that are still going up to this day, like, you know, the Jigsaw
There's like a
Murders.
Paranormal Activity sequence.
Well, he could rig the hotel to have Paranormal Activity things going on, using his magic background to have these weird staged paranormal events and just slowly murdering everybody. I think that would be a fun idea.
I think that's a good idea.
And it would be a way that we could still have that documentary feel to it that makes this one charming without even having to remove it at all throughout. And you could still have moments where he's going into like, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, and it'll show like a high production value shot. Because I did like those moments where he's like explaining what's going to happen, and it's cutting from documentary footage to like, it's almost like his imagination, which is why I as stupid and grotesque and as that breast sequence is, when he's describing it, and the way it's framed, like I said before, it is like what a 13-year-old boy pictures in his mind when he's like seeing breasts for the first time. The breasts are the entire screen, and the hands fondling them like, I don't know what I'm doing. Whereas when he's picturing his murders, they're like these ornate shots, like he's watching a movie in his imagination. Anyway, yeah, that's my idea.
Yeah, I would sort of expand upon that. I would say like, I think, you know, making an 8 or 10 episode sort of horror series, and each episode could be a reference or callback to popular, you know, horror films throughout the 20 years it's been since this film has come out. You know, each episode could have a surviving member from the episode that all sort of cascades into the final episode. So each episode is a different genre of sort of horror film, or there's different callbacks to each type, from like the Chucky, the Voorhees, the Krugers, the maybe a Saw, maybe a Cube, something, you know, right, to those degrees. And ultimately the final episode would be all the surviving members, you know, banding together to really take out Leslie Vernon and finally kill what would be this Phoenix-esque husk of a human being based off of the events of this film. Because I kind of feel like he didn't I feel like the whole crushing of head and burning thing actually killed the human being that was the antithesis of this whole film, and it turned him into the supernatural being that he was ultimately going to be. And the sequel to that could be his supernatural being hunting these people down, and in each episode being genre callbacks to the famous horror films of past, ultimately leading to the great grand scale of them, you know, teaming together, bringing him down, thinking they've stopped him, up until the credits roll and his hand rises from the Sarlacc pit and the camera falls down on the sandy dunes of Tatooine.
I was going to say he succeeds, and then he goes into like the dining room of the mansion, and it's just Jason Voorhees and Freddy and Chucky, and they're all at the table, and they're all just like, "You did it, Leslie! You fucking did it, man! Yeah.
Well done."
Yeah,
I really like
becomes
that.
and the final episode is the roast of Leslie Vernon,
and then he lights himself on fire.
I really like the idea of the talking heads of him going, and it cuts to him being like, what I thought that was going to happen.
Like The Office.
Because the idea of a talking head is like, when you watch Survivor, you watch a reality show, or even The Office, is like the thing already happened and they had to take people into a room to like react.
Yeah.
So he's like, does all the shit, and then it cuts to him like, I don't know, he fell on that forklift.
Let's take that, but he's still the burnt husk of a creature after, like, he's burnt and he can't take this mask off. It's glued to his face.
Yeah.
And he's just that. He looks like Uncle Howdy now, just like, ah.
Uncle Howdy is a wrestling reference, Steve.
Oh,
You know the Bray Wyatt.
I thought that was
character
the Jim
showed you
Carrey
that
character from
yesterday?
In Living Color, where he's like a burnt fireman or whatever.
No, that's Fire Marshal Bill.
Fire Marshal
Let
Bill.
me show you something.
I was just joking, guys. I knew the reference.
Fantastic. Well,
Oh, I know all the things, Steven. I know.
Oh my god.
want to play a game?
Oh no, the game.
Oh, the game. Fuck, I lost.
It's time to play Guess the MPAA.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mask Thompson. And I'm here to tell you about the greatest living game that exists in the existence of existence. And that is, of course, the MPAA rating game. The rules are simple. Each movie in existence is given an MPAA rating, a certificate rating, if you will. And those are given to movies that have actual certificate ratings given to them. So what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to give you the first two numbers.
I'm
the
shocked this
film.
one has an MPAA.
And all you have to do is guess a number between 000 and 999. But this week is unique. I'm not going to give you those first two numbers.
Okay.
It's a blind episode because the number does not matter.
It's true. It's more so confusing to some of our guests. They're like, so wait,
It's
what?
true. So what's going to happen? What we're going to do is the guest always goes first here on Hated to See This One. So, Chris, you know the game. You've seen the game played. Why don't you go first and give us a number between 000 and 999?
And that's how you
three-digit
scale
number.
the MPAA rating?
No, because the MPAA
Oh no, it's become
rating
confusing now
number
because you didn't give the other two numbers. It's
a 5-digit number. I just need a 3-digit number from you, and I'll tell you if it's higher or lower.
Okay. 392.
Lower.
200.
Lower. Chris,
92?
like 092.
Yeah.
Lower.
Oh. 50.
Lower.
002?
Lower.
001.
Lower.
What?
000? So it's no rating? Isn't it what?
Chris actually got it this week. You're the second person to ever get it. You said the words I was looking for. There is no rating for this movie. There is no MPAA rating for this movie. It was not rated by the MPAA. I tricked you guys. That's why I didn't give you the first two numbers. I tricked you. And
I was going to say the MPAA rating for this film was R. I was like, where's the numbers come from? Isn't it a letter scale? I'm very confused.
I didn't even listen to the numbers you said.
Wow.
Okay, so I guess technically it would be 4 because it was rated as an R film. Because there's murder and titties.
No. So it
has to go through a
when
process, and then it's given a certificate number for when it was rated, and the number is what we are guessing during that game.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't over explain it because I assumed you had.
You should just let me
tuned
explain
in.
it every week. I'm pretty succinct and good at it.
Yeah, I think but it's funny.
Well, no, I knew there was an MPA. I just didn't recognize, or I guess my brain just didn't decide to retain the information that numbers were involved. I was thinking like PG, PG-13, R. You know, that's what my brain was like. Oh, he's meaning that. I didn't realize it was the number thing.
Covey, guest to the show, fan of the show, friend of the show. He's gonna love this particular one.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's talk about the Home Alone of it all.
If you had to pick one,
What do you think the Home Alone of it
is
all?
the Home Alone of it all?
Can someone please tell me when the Home Alone of
I
it
really
all?
gotta
When's the
know.
Home Alone
When
of it all?
is the Home Alone of it all?
What is
the Home Alone of it all? Now that's the Home Alone of it all.
This I will explain. Okay. The Home Alone of it all is the idea that every movie has a moment or a sequence that you sort of came to the movie to see. Okay. In the original, where it comes from in Home Alone, you want to, when Kevin McAllister slaps down the blueprint and shows all the traps he's going to do for the rest of the movie, that's what you were there to see. Now, this has evolved. Sometimes it's the third act of the movie. Sometimes it's like the trailer moments. And I think this movie specifically is going to have a very interesting discourse related to these ideas. But World Mind, you've seen this show. I know you've been here to see the MPAA game and the Home Alone of it all.
I referenced it recently.
What is your Home Alone of it all for the film The Rise of Leslie Nielsen?
My Home Alone of it all is preparation and training can make anything a dream come true. That's my Home Alone of it all. The secret sauce of what it takes to be a household name.
All right.
Would you like to elaborate?
Well, just the fact that you watch this process of this driven individual go through the tasks, the planning, and the enticement of allowing outside individuals to bear witness to the work that he is so thoughtfully planned out. It all to lead to a grander recognition of his name and being, and ultimately being a supernatural being, and that's his goals. So truly the Home Alone of it all is be prepared, train.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
Because if you want to chase somebody and make it look easy, you got to do cardio.
You do so much cardio.
It's crazy.
Steve, what's your Home Alone of it all?
For me, the moment in the movie when it really picks up and is basically the moment we've been waiting for would probably be when he kills the first couple off screen, because the entire movie is preparation up to that point. The preparation H, all the way right up to when he's rubbing preparation H on his face. Remember that part?
Petroleum jelly.
So for me, the Home Alone of it all is, you're building up all this anticipation of this grand plan that he's put into motion, has been preparing for the entire movie. And the moment in which that begins, he literally says, "It started, it's begun." And like, that's the moment for me.
My Home Alone of it all is as follows.
Yes, you have to sleep on the hide-a-bed with Fuller. If he has something to drink, he's gonna wet the bed.
Oh my God.
I have another one though.
It's
I have
the
another
correct
Home
answer.
Alone of it all though. You're not prepared for this. You're not prepared for this Home Alone of it all, are you? I don't think you could ever be prepared for the Home Alone of it all that is happening right now.
Oh God.
Hold on. No, it's fine.
Paprika?
French call les incompetents.
Oh my
Listen,
God.
competent.
What?
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 My Home Alone of it all is actually the opposite of the normal Home Alone of it all, though. It's the first two acts of this movie before it just switches over to movie. I came to this film to see the mockumentary. Pretty simple. And also,
Les incompetents.
Do what the French call les incompetents. What?
she's so pleased with herself.
If the office crew follow Creed around for a day, you get Behind the Mask with Leslie Vernon.
That's true.
Oh my God.
That's who they should get to play him.
Oh yeah. Creed Bratton is Old man.
Leslie
Leslie
Nielsen in.
The
Shirley. Don't call me Shirley.
All right. Do we want to go to our final thoughts?
That's all that's left.
It's time for our final thoughts.
Just like at the start, we let our guests go first. Hit us with your final thoughts and a rating, whether it be a joke rating or a real out of 5 rating or out of 10 rating. It's all you, buddy. How you doing, Chris?
You know what? My final thoughts are: I think Leslie Vernon is a solid character in the ethos of slashers. I would love to see Leslie Vernon get his comeuppance by the comic book characters Hack and Slash. If you know, you know. And
The bad guys from Reboot?
No, actually, it's a whole comic series about this
Ninja Turtles 2.
young lady
That's
named
amazing.
Cassie Hack, and she's got this supernatural demon named Slash that they walk around and they kill serial killers and murderers and stuff like that. And Leslie Vernon would be one of their victims. But yeah, I think Leslie Vernon ultimately, if you're a horror fan, you've never heard of this film, but let's be frank, if you're watching this, you probably heard of this film. You should have heard of this film. You should watch this film. This is one of those films that again, it's like it's breaking the magician's code. It's exposing the pro wrestling world. It's behind the murder mask of your favorite serial killers and how all those tropes and scenes you've ever seen are played out thoughtfully in a manner that only stoners could really truly ponder. That's what I think of this film. I'll give it a solid 4 out of 8 slashers because slashers are infinite, and it's gonna get a 4 out of 8 because the character, the presentation are good. Yeah. Final
Thank
thoughts.
you.
Bong. Bong.
I do. If you need to know where I'm at, I didn't know where.
No, it is. We're not there yet.
All right, hang tight then. You'll find out. Keep watching.
I wanted to say we haven't seen Ike Calden in a long time, and thank you for coming through tonight, Ike Calden. Welcome back.
Hi.
Steve, what are your final thoughts for the movie film
Behind the Mask?
Yeah.
Behind
Leslie
the Mask.
Vernon.
The movie we watched today, or I watched yesterday, and a little bit more today. I watched it almost twice. That's how much I liked it. Usually I only watch the movie once for the review and the discussion. But if I like it a lot and I feel like there's more that I need to see in order to have a more competent discussion about the movie, I'll watch it again. And I did that today with this movie, which means I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I think it is an interesting, creative, and somewhat original take on something that we've seen a million times presented to us in a way that we've never seen before. And I really appreciate that. I had no idea what I was getting into, and I was a little bit worried within the first 10 minutes. But as soon as we're introduced to Leslie himself, all of that melted away, and I was just having a lot of fun, basically joining in the conversation with the circle of stoners talking about how a serial killer could possibly do the things that they do. And the answers are all here, folks. They're all in this movie, and it's so fun, and it's such a good time. In terms of a rating, it is such a good time. It's a sprint of happiness, a sprint of glorious murder, right up until you slather your face in hemorrhoid cream and it just turns into a regular movie. That's my rating.
Really
Hemorrhoid
shrinks
cream
the
on the face
excitement.
right at the end. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, what do you guys want to talk about? It's a wrestling reference. Great film. It was a little predictable with the twist being telegraphed pretty much from the start, but I think the point was more to tell a meta slasher story, and it fit perfectly in this month about pages of the Grimoire being ripped out, which is about all of the slasher legends we cover. I love the transitions between documentary and film, which Steve, I guess, was divisive for you. And it was really cool to have the last 25 minutes be in world. I gave this movie a 4 out of 5. I also gave this movie one of the most original ideas for movie I've ever seen in a while. I've seen in a while, and I was pleasantly surprised. I also give this movie, fuck it, mask off. You were the one all along. I also give this movie.
You're what the French call les incompetents.
I don't actually give it that. I just think that's fucking crazy that that's her, right? And I think before we get the GTF out of here, we just have to talk about our, our plugs. So let Chris, let Keldon know where they can find you, where they can see you, what you're plugging, what you're bugging, what you're glugging.
Where you can plug a bit of me into your life. You can find me basically on all socials under WorldMind, at WorldMind, Instagram, YouTube. I've been creating and content creating for some odd years, roughly 10, maybe a little more. But I'm also a producer behind this lovely United Federation of Podcasts. I help do productions on a little podcast called Hold Up, a movie podcast where we talk about 3 films, generally with an overarching theme. Recently, it was a Bugs theme where we talked about Starship Troopers, The Secret World of Arietti, and Arachnophobia. We're talking about monsters. On the next episode, we're going to be covering the latest Godzilla film, -1, A Colossal, and 20,000 Fathoms Under the Sea. And on top of that, we also talked about monsters on cryptozoology-themed episode of Trivial Debates. If you ever liked movie fights, come check us out at Trivial Debates. We basically cover 3 or 6 themes, movies, television, music, history, sports, and a wild card theme. But we've also been making the episodes themed. We had a cryptozoology theme. Mr. Stephen Waters was there as a participant for that episode. And this coming Sunday, July 28th, we're having a Star Trek theme. We have Trek Trav from Australia, a Star Trek content creator there. We've got Sean Farrick from Trek Culture joining us, as well as Ashley Millard, our own, from the Live Long and Podcast, another Star Trek themed podcast, a part of the United Federation podcast, being hosted by the captain of that podcast, Dave Mater, going on at Trivial Debates. So you can find me at Trivial Debates, Hold Up a Movie Podcast, and everything under the sun at United Federation of Podcasts, on top of all my things at WorldMind.
Well, thank you for being on tonight, Mr. Mind. Steve.
Also, I got a pussy.
Oh, God.
Gosh. Look at that.
My name is
So
Stephen.
Nope.
My name is Stephen Waters. You can find me on all my social media at Boba Blackfly. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me here on this show. Hey, did you see this one every Thursday? But you can also find me doing some voice work for a whole bunch of stuff on the internet. Darth Theorist, Arcane Archives, Dr. O, Ready Set Disaster, a whole bunch of stuff coming out. Check them out. I appreciate it. I like when you like them. I like when you subscribe to them. And I like when you leave me nice little comments saying, hey, nice Count Dooku impression. And I'd say, oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
He did a wonderful blob on X-Rated, the X-Men animated
I was the
review
blob
show.
over here.
That's not the
It
voice
was
I
the
did.
Blob.
That was Nightcrawler.
That's
Thank you, Steve. It seems like every time you do your plug, you add a new little feather in your cap, a little new voice.
Got a lot going on right now. Also, I was
Man's
looking at
peacock.
I was looking at Letterboxd because I forgot to do a Letterboxd for this movie, and the first review of someone that follows me was, I had to rewatch this because I was high last time, and I needed to confirm that it was as good as I thought it was.
I watched it
4 out of
Stone
5
Cold, and
stars.
it was that good. My name is Jason R. Phillips. Nobody will ever know what my middle name is because I'll never tell them. And that's not my
Richard.
plug. My plug.
Rinky-dink.
Plug.
Jason Rinky Dink Phillips.
Son of a bitch.
From the East Coast.
Get old Rinky Dink
Yes.
Phillips in the house.
Old Richard Rinky Dink. You can find me literally on this podcast each and every week on Twitch and YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We put our podcasts up for video on demand every Friday, the night after. So look for this episode tomorrow on YouTube. You can also find me every month here in Toronto live at Superkicked Wrestling, Superkicked Pro Wrestling. I'm the announcer for Superkicked, okay? And I go out there and I say, hey, the following contest is, and I'm very charismatic. I don't know if you can tell by when I do it here because doing my thing.
He's whimsical, folks. He's whimsical.
I'm whimsical. But I have also been on the yep, Durek is correct. I'm better than Bruce Buffer. Okay.
Not paid nearly as enough, but he should be. Should
Well,
be getting
not-
them Bruce
Like
Buffer
Bruce
bucks.
Buffering. Am I right over here? Whoa!
Contest. But yeah, you can find hey, did you see this one anywhere you get your podcast? Essentially, I don't think that we're on what's that right wing one? I don't think we're on.
Truth Social.
I don't think we're on Truth Social, but we're everywhere else. Vote if you're an American. Vote for Kamala Harris, and I think Steve. What I'll do is I'll do the ending here, but I do have to make sure that we get all our ducks in a row. Okay. Chris, now try to follow me. Try to follow me here.
Where am I following you? Where are we going?
I need you to ask the question, the burning question that's asked each and every week.
Hey, look at us. No? No? Maybe. Oh, I know. Hey, did you see this one? Toot toot.
Wow.
Joke. Comedy. Joke. Comedy. Joke.
I'm gonna squeegee my dreams, so I'll be a serial killer too.
Somebody say a
know.
joke so I can go rub Preparation H all over my freaking face.
I think that was it.
That's not funny?
No, it is funny.
Beam up some Star Trek content with Live Long and Podcast. Tune in to X-Rated, the X-Men animated review show. Artistic interviews with graphic histories. A roundtable movie discussion with Hey, did you see this one? And movie reviews with Hold Up, a movie podcast. And while you're at it, spin a few records with Eamon on Track. Watch us duke it out on trivial debates. And let's chat about TV with the Super Mater Brothers. It's all here on the United Federation of Podcasts.